Welcome back to another episode of the Market Close. We are live. It is Monday, June 15th. We are here, and it looks like we are ending out with a relatively green day. It could have been a little bit more green based on some of the price action we're seeing right now in the S&P 500. We got rejected at 756.67. We're now at 754.40. I don't think anyone could be complaining. You're still up 1.5% on the day. Given we were at 725 a couple of days ago, quite frankly, this is a really nice move to see. But pretty much everything else, along with the S&P, has been taking a nice move up outside of oil. SpaceX, this is just crazy. We will talk about SpaceX. Absolutely wild. 188.7. It looks like it's halted right now, doesn't it? Look at it. It's not even moving. It looks like it's literally halted. That's crazy. Up 17%, 2.5 trillion. We'll talk about SpaceX in a bit. Robinhood couldn't get above 100. Likely not going to get that close above 100. We'll see. We got 13 minutes left, but 98.69, not complaining. Meta almost at 600. Reddit, nice little 11% move. SoFi holding on to 17, which is nice to see. You got HIMS up 12%. Might get that $30 close that it's been waiting for a while. AMD got hit at 567, still at 548, up 7%. I mean, a relatively green day across the entire board. You got Nebius 12%. Viavi, that's up 1.2%. NVIDIA couldn't really get the breakout, got stopped at 212.70, but in the morning it was at 208. So 211.89, can't be too upset about that. Micron, massive move up 10%. Western Digital up 15%. Seagate up 8%. All your memory names going crazy. I think SanDisk will get the official close above 2,000. SanDisk is almost at 2,100, so it looks like that's going to happen. Overall, very, very green day, and a lot of that green, again, is based on the Iran deal, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it, deal, framework, MOU, whatever it is a thing, and it's enough for the markets to react to it, which is why it looks like we're getting this green. Oil, by the way, just above 80. Need a little bit more of an update to get oil to come down back below 80. I think we were there for a little bit in the pre-markets, but the fact that it is down 4% on the day is helping equity markets go higher, and you're potentially seeing a new paradigm for how the markets are going to think about inflation expectations and rate hikes and cuts if we do end up getting oil to come down. I think the real story of the day, though, and there's a bunch of different headlines. We're going to have an early SpaceX investor on the show at 4:30, partner at Founders Fund. So very excited to talk to them about the SpaceX investment and ultimately, how they see the vision for space playing out. But I think the story of the day is SpaceX. I mean, this is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So I took 2 trades on SpaceX today. I'm trying to get better at just trading SPY. And I feel like, if you're a beginner trader, just trading the market itself versus trading these super high beta volatile stocks is a much more appropriate way to learn the fundamentals of trading. But I looked at this chart and I was like, no, this thing's just going up. So I took 2 trades on this. I bought at 177, sold at 179. Obviously could have made a lot more money if I held. And so I got a little greedy, bought at 186. And then sold at 188.56, which was basically the short-term top until 5 seconds ago, as we see it breaking above 189, because then it fell all the way to 181. So I took 2 trades on it, made some money. I'm not holding this as a long-term investment. I just can't stomach sleeping well at night holding this thing. But a lot of people can. 230 million shares of volume that has been traded today. It's added another, $25 billion in market cap. 2.47 trillion. I mean, I purely think this is momentum. Why do I think it's momentum? Because the fact that I was able to make money on this, trading it up today, makes me feel like a lot of people are probably doing the same, except I think unlike me that just sold really quickly, I think there's a lot of people that might be saying, you know what, this thing's going to go to 200 and let's hold on for the ride. And I think that's a perfectly fair assessment given the momentum, but that momentum can go to the downside just as easily to the upside. And I'm not willing to stick around for the downside, but for the people that are willing to stick around for more upside, you're getting it right here as SpaceX is breaking all-time highs as we get into the close. Again, it's quite incredible. I think the question has been, is there going to be liquidity for SpaceX? The liquidity is obviously there. I mean, wasn't that the biggest bear case last week? Is there liquidity? Is SpaceX going to top the market? It's like, well, looks like there's plenty of liquidity. 300, almost 230 million shares of liquidity for this thing today, as it's up another $30. If you got your allocation at 135, you got to be pretty happy seeing this thing potentially get above 190. And I think that SpaceX, as the options open up tomorrow, will be the most highly traded stock in the market, potentially even above NVIDIA and Tesla, as we see this one continue to make more numbers. I do not think SpaceX is cheap. I think it, ironically, given I traded it today, it's gonna welcome a lot of traders into the name, just like Tesla and NVIDIA welcome traders, because of just how volatile it is. And, that's part of what you need for trading, some volatility. But, the volatility does go both ways. And so I think there's going to be a lot of people putting in their bids for SpaceX. 189.40. We'll talk more about SpaceX later. NVIDIA, let's revisit the conversation we had in the morning about them issuing debt. So they issued $20 billion of debt. That $20 billion was then increased to $25 billion. Why was it increased to $25 billion? Well, same reason Google increased their equity issuance from $80 billion to $85 billion. NVIDIA has around $85 billion of investor demand for bond sales, which is kind of crazy now that I think about it, because Google raised from 80 to 85 billion for equity issuances because they had so much more demand. And the exact same number that Google is going to be diluting with equity, not debt, is essentially the exact same amount of demand that came for NVIDIA, 85 billion of investor demand. This is why I think NVIDIA put out the issuance today. I mean, for them, it's cheap debt. It doesn't put a dent into their free cash flow. They know they can pay it off. Every bank in the world would be willing to give NVIDIA a loan because it's NVIDIA. Marvell, wow, 311. That one making a move in the past 30 minutes as well. This thing went from 330 to 244 back to 311. This has been one of the most volatile names in the market, along with SpaceX over the past couple of days. Meta as well at 591. But yeah, I think everyone's willing to give NVIDIA the money because the cash flows, the operating income supports it. And so as a result, it might be more strategic for them to raise some cheap debt instead of fund it through their free cash flows, especially if you're able to get that money, just given the quality of the bonds that they're issuing. So I don't know if it's too bearish. I think it was just confusing in the morning for why they're doing it. It kind of makes sense strategically for how they're allocating this capital and why they're trying to get this capital, but also the fact that there's this much demand once again for NVIDIA's debt. I mean, you just okay. I mean, every week we're like, when does it stop? When do people finally say enough is enough? And it's like, it doesn't seem. Micron new all-time highs. SpaceX, there you go, 190, 2.5 trillion officially. It seems like liquidity is there, demand is there, excitement is there, exuberance is there. All of that can flip. We experienced it last week. But the point is, it's not out of the system, as some people were thinking last week with some of the red days we have. It's actually more in the system than you could have ever imagined, as these names are continuing to hit new highs. Google right there, 367. Did get a sell-off from 373, but still holding on to 360. SPY, 753. That's up 1.6%. And then Palantir, 134.62. Elon's net worth, 1.3 trillion. I mean, look, if this thing, imagine SpaceX normalizes 200, folks. Imagine it happens. And when you got Trump talking about the war being over, it definitely helps to get the market to be more excited. This was him at the G7 summit today with Macron.
We've worked on many deals together. I'm very happy to say very signed. The deal's all signed. And the strait is already partially opened. As you know, they're doing a little hunting for a couple of mines that they've already found. But it's essentially ships are starting to go out now. On Friday, it'll be completely opened. We got along very well with Iran. It's a different set of leaders. As you know, the first set is gone. The second set is gone. And we found the third set to be very smart, strong, very smart. But we ended up making a deal. I felt badly that we had to go back on the attack for 2 nights. And I thought a third, but we made it before that happened. But I think a lot of great things are going to happen in the Middle East right now. And very importantly, the oil is plummeting down and the stock market is shooting up like a rocket today.
That's what he cares about. That is what he cares about. He just wants stocks to go up. No matter how you politically feel. Again, if you're a bear, it's just tough when the most powerful person on the planet wants stocks to go higher.
Record kind of numbers. And the oil has taken its biggest plunge, and we're into the low numbers. Not quite back yet, Kevin, to the extent, but we're getting close to the numbers we were before it all started. And the main thing is that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. They fully agreed to that, with strong policing powers, and they won't have a nuclear weapon, which is what it was all about, because they probably would have used it if they had it. So we had 2 big moments when they terminated the JCPOA, that was the Obama deal, the Barack Hussein Obama deal. And when I terminated that, it was very important because it was a road to a nuclear weapon. It was a horrible deal for the United States. It was a deal where.
So there you go. That's Trump making the argument that his deal was better. We don't have the official details of the deal yet. Hopefully we get that on Friday. JD Vance in the morning did say there's going to be a lot more negotiations that take place. So regardless of what deal ends up becoming into fruition, whether it's a MOU or whatever it is, the point is the markets have basically priced in that it's over. And as long as that continues to be the case, we might continue to see this green. SpaceX right there, 190.64. I mean, what a day, dude. This thing started off today at 167. Yeah, 167. There's 13 billion shares outstanding. So 190 minus 167 times 13. SpaceX has added $300 billion of market capitalization today. I mean, it's pretty incredible, but there it is, 190.70. And if this thing gets over 200 and just normalizes with that two handle, this will be holding close to what, a $3 trillion market cap. You know, I kind of thought SpaceX would close on Friday at 180, 190. Obviously, I was wrong, closed at 170, got close at 176, but a day later, 191. There you go. S&P at 753. Not every stock had a massive day. Some of these names got sold off a bit. Zeta, that ended up going red. ServiceNow, that was up about 1.94. It was up 5% at one point. So some of your names definitely sold off a little bit. Not all the semis ended up going red, but a decent chunk of them did. ARM's up. Marvell was up. ARM was at 385 in the morning. Intel down from the highs, but still up on the day, 127. So, I mean, at its core, this was one of those days where, every day is not going to be like this potentially, but this was one of those days where airlines are up, cruise lines are up, fintech is up, SoFi didn't lose 17, S&P is up, Bitcoin almost back to 67. SpaceX 192. Why not? Every dollar is 13 billion added to this thing. But this was just one of those days, the day after the war theoretically is over, Nvidia trying to get 212 on the close, where it was going to be a green day. And that's what we're seeing. Yes, for everyone saying the insiders can't sell, that is correct. I mean, eventually the insiders will be able to sell. And don't remember CoreWeave. This was a couple months ago. CoreWeave was pushing 150. I think this was January, February, and then the insiders finally got to sell. And when they sold, oh boy, did they sell. It was like 300 million all at once, which on a company like CoreWeave, that was a decent chunk of selling pressure. So eventually that day is going to come. No one knows when that's going to happen. Well, we do technically know the timeline of when it's going to happen. We don't know what price it's going to happen at because it'll depend on what SpaceX is trading at. But for now, I think the traders are hopping in and they are either going to keep bidding it up or take it down. But as of now, it continues to go higher here. Netflix right there, 81. That one getting a little bit of move. Yeah, when the options come out, it's going to be even crazier when we see. Does it feel kind of euphoric? Okay, SpaceX feels euphoric, but today's price action doesn't feel euphoric in the broader market. I mean, if the war is over, again, conceptually, and oil is down and it's headed towards below 80, SoFi should be up 3%. Robinhood should be up a little bit. United Airlines should be up 4%. Like, these are not crazy swings. Meta, which is still trading at 17 times forward, getting a nice little 4% move today, which does not even put a dent in the bucket in terms of how much it's taken to the downside over the past couple of weeks. Like, it should be getting some reaction. I would be more concerned if we were getting no reaction on oil being down. But outside of certain individual names, the broader market going up today feels decent. And S&P got rejected at 756, right? So relatively calm day at 754, even though that's up 1.7%, but it was on its way to go up almost 2%. So it feels like it's consolidating, but normalizing at a relatively decent level. Monday, June 15th, 4 p.m., the stock market, once again, is closed. S&P closes at 754.68. Space Exploration Technologies closes at 192.39, 20% on the day. Absolutely crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. Tesla gets the close at 411. Marvell back into the 300s. Nvidia got a nice 212.45 close. Palantir 134.71. Robinhood 98. Robinhood couldn't get 100. Every time it tried, it kept getting rejected. I don't know if the street's ready to get it to normalize back above 100 yet. Like, I think there's obvious tailwinds that we talked about throughout the morning open, but for Robinhood to really hold 100, I think it's just going to take a little bit more juice, especially because, again, we still, Q2 earnings, we don't know if they're really going to substantially beat, even though these tailwinds are there. But look, I can't be upset that it's in the high 90s. As long as we can kind of chill out here instead of the low 70s, we can take some time to make the next leg higher. AMD, got to be happy on this one. 547, got hit at 558, but man, this was at 437 last week. Hell of a recovery. Micron basically getting ready for 1100. Intel at 132, closed at 127 on the day. Salesforce ended up going red like Zeta, so some of these software names still couldn't get out of the doghouse here. Qualcomm as well, 220. This was up 4%, and that was green. Did HIMS get the $30 close finally? HIMS did get a $30 close. It's been a while. There you go. HIMS right there at 30. Rocket Lab did get rejected at 110. You know what's even more interesting? I'm sure some of you guys know this, but EchoStar, which got into the S&P 500 and owns a decent chunk of SpaceX, this thing got smacked on Friday, and it really hasn't had the type of move you would expect it to have as a legitimate proxy for SpaceX when you look at its net asset value compared to the premium it's trading at. But I think they kind of put it in the bucket with all the other space names. It was up 3% of the day, but Lunar, ASTS, all those names. Lunar was down 3% of the day. ASTS, did we close green? We closed green 6%. A lot of those names didn't get the real big push you would think they would get with SpaceX. It's almost like people just sold them to buy SpaceX. So some of these, some of the space names didn't make that big a difference. When do the options open up on SpaceX? Tomorrow. They open up tomorrow. Speaking of options, let's take a look at the top 20 stocks traded in the options market today. So here's what we've got. NVIDIA and Tesla are usually number 1 and 2. They are number 1 and 2 again. NVIDIA, Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, Meta. Those were your top 5 today. Then you had Micron. Then you had Amazon. Then you had Intel, Hoodie, top 10. Google rounding out the top 10. Then you have Palantir, AMD, MicroStrategy, SoFi, Marvell, Nokia keep showing up there every day. Look at that, 276,000 calls, 54,000 puts. Doesn't mean all those calls were bought, but definitely a lot of trading action there. Iren, Oracle, Netflix, and Wolf. Those were your top 20 for today. Michael Berry just bought more PayPal and Adobe. That is correct. On Friday, I believe he told everybody he's buying more PayPal and Adobe. Again, look, I don't hate PayPal and Adobe at all from a valuation perspective. It's just, it's interesting, man. If he thinks the market's going to collapse, how the hell do you think? PayPal and Adobe are not going to hold up in a market that collapses. Costco might, Verizon might, but PayPal and Adobe aren't like those types of value plays. They might be perceived as a value play, but they have historically not acted like value. They're growth stocks at the end of the day. The reason they've been getting hit is because they haven't been growing that much, but that doesn't mean they've turned into value stocks. They haven't turned into Berkshire. So if his bear case for the semis, which again, those puts, he started buying puts on this when it was like 400. It's at 640 on SMH. So I mean, puts are deeply underwater. Semis keep going up. That's going to make it more underwater. If the semis go down, we saw what happened last week. It took everything down with it. It's not like the software names get a magical bid when the semis go. This is why I think you kind of got to be long the AI CapEx names if you think that story continues. So it is just interesting, right? That he's buying 2 names that might not participate on the upside, but getting hit hard on the downside as well. So that's what we have for today. Got a bunch of different headlines. We'll walk through it again at 4:30. We're going to have a nice guest on the show, give their thoughts on SpaceX, early investor in it. It'll be nice to hear their different perspective on how they kind of think of the valuation, the overall potential. 754.68 on the SP. Put in the chat if you bought anything today, if you sold anything today, if you DCA'd. Let us know. Amit, isn't this price action just market makers buying up the stock to provide liquidity for options tomorrow? It might be. I actually didn't even think of that. That's a great point. That's a hell of a point. It might legitimately be market makers buying up a ton of stocks so that they can easily sell calls tomorrow. But they would also be hedging. Their goal is to stay delta neutral. So that could be part of the reason, which might actually be bullish for the stock because you got a base of Citadels and Jane Street supporting it. Now it could be bullish short term. Obviously, they tend to rug pull all the time, but to at least support the launch of options, that might be happening. Han Solo, I sold covered calls on Nebius, CoreWeave, Western Digital, and Rocket Lab. CoreWeave had an okay day, 106. It didn't have a massive breakout. Nebius obviously had a much bigger dollar amount that it broke out through, up 11.9%, 260. But both of those, obviously strong days, and their premiums are up pretty high. See a couple Metas, see a few SpaceXs, see some Zetas. Microsoft, I don't think broke the $400 range yet. It is just holding below it. Broke out for a second. 399.76 was at 385 last week. So it is up a lot from last week, but IGV, I think, is holding it down. Reddit did go bye-bye today, as that one got a nice break, up 12%. Piper Sandler had some good notes about Reddit the other day on Friday in terms of their ad inventory and how it's tracking up. We also had Piper Sandler reiterate their Robinhood price target. Also, take a look at this. Robinhood, in terms of its average App Store ranking as of June 15, 2026, is ahead of SoFi, Schwab, Webull, and Fidelity. So this takes the average App Store rank over the past, going back to like December 29th, so past 8 months. Robinhood's at 8.7 on average. That doesn't mean it's always in the top, but the average of all these names Robinhood has been ahead of, which means there's a lot more retail investors downloading, signing up, making accounts, putting in deposits, which is obviously good for Robinhood. The Trump accounts probably have also created a boost, but can that accelerate even further in the summer, which could get those Q2 numbers to be obviously very strong going into the end of the summer year. See a couple of people saying they're hedging a little bit. I don't hate that. Obviously got super green, and in case anything happens, even though the big macro thing we needed to get resolved is resolved. Some hedges here. I mean, SOXS, this is triple leverage short semis. This was down 17% today. It's at $3.94. I mean, relatively cheap hedge. Obviously, it's a levered ETF, so you have to be careful with it. But if you're super long semis, the days your semis are down, or if they do get a pretty big hit, which again, I think a lot of people thought last week, all right, this is it. Semis are going to take a breather. Intel fell below 100. What's his name? Micron was pushing below 850. AMD almost below 430. I mean, you just saw a lot of volatility to the downside. Broadcom was pushing 370. And a few days later, the bounce back has been so massive that now you have a lot of people saying, all right, if they go back to those levels, we're buying the dip. And I think that continues to keep many, many, many of these names holding on to the levels that they've been able to hold on to. All right, let's get through some other macro headlines and talk about some different stuff going on. We don't have any, what do you call it? Earnings today. So we have a bunch of different headlines. Let's run through this. First of all, this chart by the Financial Times, I thought this was absolutely crazy. Global capital markets have raised $4.7 trillion in equity, loan issuance, and debt. I mean, this chart right here is just unbelievable, and the amount of it makes sense why Nvidia says, hey, we can definitely get 20 billion of demand. Again, they increased it from 20 to 25 billion. Total capital raised is running at 500 billion above the 2021 post-pandemic financing boom, and this is the third consecutive annual increase for this point in the year. All of this, I mean, not literally all of this, but a majority of this is tied to AI. Obviously, it's the biggest companies in the world that are issuing debt. Oracle, Meta, Google, Nvidia, et cetera, CoreWeave, all these names for data centers renting out GPUs, and markets continue to support it. So it's one of those things where, a lot of people are saying, well, what about a private credit problem in the United States? And you can point to student loans and credit card delinquencies and auto delinquencies and all that stuff, but it hasn't stopped retail sales. It hasn't stopped the labor market. It obviously hasn't stopped consumer spending or consumer confidence, given the numbers we got on Friday. And also, even with gas at $4.50, people continue to spend. So would a private credit problem with the consumer meaningfully affect the CapEx bond, equity, and debt issuances that are happening from companies that, quite frankly, don't really care if the consumer, I mean, like yes, if the consumer is bad, it will hurt Meta because it'll hurt their advertising revenues. But I don't think Zucks is going to be like, oh, because our revenues are declining because of weakening ad budgets, we're going to stop our CapEx. I mean, the way this guy has been spending on CapEx, same thing with Sundar and all these other guys, they're on a mission to spend as much as they can. And until we see a crack in that story, it feels like it might be even detached from the consumer and be kind of a K-shaped issuance of debt, which ultimately is bullish for many of these stocks. SpaceX right there down about 1% after hours, as that was green for the majority of the day. Here was Mr. Josh Brown today, and here were his thoughts on how this market has continued to rally upwards.
Oil stocks immediately got slammed. We had a month like this in May, 100% of the XLE down. That's exactly what you would have expected if I had given you this headline on Friday morning. But they went risk on really quickly. And when I look at the leaderboard, all I'm seeing are memory, data center stocks, infrastructure for data center stocks. And this is really what people have been waiting for They want to see some resolution so they can get back to what the prior trend was. And this obviously is what the prior trend has been all year.
This shows that the trend is still intact, right? That we just needed to get some things figured out, and there's still a road to go here until we really, find out more about the agreement. We have to see it signed. It has to be legit. The strait has to open. Oil presumably needs to come down far below 80, right? But what does it tell you about where we could go?
Well, what we did is, we talked about it a little bit last week, but we did over the weekend is we upgraded consumer discretionary. We were underweight. It had been the second worst performing sector year to date.
And probably the least, probably the least liked.
Yeah.
And for all the conversations that we've had over the last couple of years, it's probably that's like you zero in on that area. So, I don't like these names.
Yeah, a lot of them really underperformed. It just seemed like that you were getting the low quality consumer stocks up a lot when you got kind of good Hormuz news. So we felt like if you were shorting all these things correctly, you probably should take the shorts off, go more to market weight, and find, there's things that are in worse shape. So I'm not going to be surprised if we get a decent trade from some of the XRT or some of the lower quality consumer names that are just, they've been beaten down for most of the last several months.
Can you use that as a proxy to say you believe in a more broadening market story? Well, and that is the one of the table legs to that.
So that word just means so many different things. It kind of like melts my motherboard a little bit, right? What we've had this year is we've had not that many stocks outperforming, but the ones that have been outperforming by a lot. So if people say that, do they mean we're going to have more stocks outperforming, or do they mean the earning? Like, I don't know what they mean, but I think basically you're going to have more stocks that are doing well relative to the index.
Well, I'll tell you, I guess what I mean is, areas like discretionary and others that just haven't traded all that well. Will we have a big reversion move? Will we have a bunch of money going in? Or, to Josh's point,
just go back to what worked
today's
before.
Price action, just go back to you dance with who brung it.
I think the answer is you go back to where you were until you find out. That's what you're seeing today. But I just think probably I feel less good about shorting things on the consumer side, and that's why we didn't go to overweight. We just went underweight to market weight, because I feel like we talked about it last Friday when I always pick on Kohl's like as a low quality consumer proxy. It was up 10% in one day. That's the kind of stuff it's dangerous to be short.
And I think he's right on about that. Like the consumer names, like an Elf, right? I know this has had a bit of a tough year, but it was up 4% today. Past 5 days, Elf is up 21%. If there was a problem with the consumer, Elf should not be making this big of a move. Now, I know it's been beaten up and any bit of good news can help, but at the end of the day, we need to see all parts of the economy kind of cooperate here, not just the AI names. And I think we're kind of getting that. When you look at even the heat map today, what was red? It was mainly healthcare and energy. Everything else, including the financials, they didn't have that ugly of a day. A couple of them were down, but the rest of them were up. Tech and semis and some parts of software led the way, but it is looking like a more meaningful broadening out of the dispersion of capital, which I think, as our boy Dr. Crossroads says right there, has a lot of legs. It has a lot of legs. Again, I've really been searching all day for like what is the ugly bear case that we need to be concerned about, and I'm going to keep trying to figure that out. But if this war with Iran is over, I mean, the SpaceX IPO was successful. Maybe this thing, okay, let's say the SpaceX IPO goes back to 135. It's still going to be worth 1.8 trillion, right? And if it actually goes down to 135, unless you bought it at these levels, you didn't lose money. So for the IPO holders, there was liquidity out there, for the people that thought this was going to collapse to like $80. That didn't happen. So there's liquidity for IPOs. The neoclouds, although Jim Chanos continues to hate them. And that's his new short, by the way, for those that didn't know. Which, look, conceptually, again, like you can sound smart by saying that the neoclouds are stupid. I get it. It's just when you really look at the level of compute that is needed, and then how the business models are adapting to it, and then you kind of look into Nebius and what they're trying to do with token generation, not just be a GPU licenser. There is more of a bull case. So I don't know if you have to get super bearish on that stuff. Inflation staying persistently high because of electronics is significantly higher plus services. Yeah, that's been a bear case for a while, right? That memory, which by the way, I'm happy you bring that comment up. Take a look at this chart on memory. Memory prices in general being high affects electronics, computers, etc. But those high prices give the S&P a lot of earnings growth. Take a look at this shit, folks. 2027, the operating income projected for the three big memory names, Samsung, SK Hynix, Micron, is $707 billion. For the big six, Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, Tesla, $661 billion. The market cap of those six is $16.79 trillion. The market cap for the memories are $2.15 trillion. Now, the pushback is going to be, well, the memory names can't put up $700 billion per year in operating income every year in perpetuity, whereas the big six, Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, Tesla, are expected to do that, forever, essentially. And I get it. That's why there's a multiple difference, obviously. But does there need to be a $14 trillion valuation difference between all these companies put together? By the way, look at Tesla at $9 billion. It's such a difference. And it trades at a higher multiple than all those names versus the big three. I mean, it's just, again, it's not easy when you think about that. Oh, yeah, sorry. Micron is at okay, so we should put a 3 trillion because Micron and SK Hynix are, this chart's a little old on the market cap. So if you add another 500 billion for Micron and SK Hynix, that's at 3 trillion. And then you have your big six at 16.7 trillion. Still obviously a massive difference in terms of the amount of operating income that's being done. But to your point, the memory prices and surging to electronics could keep inflation persisting. But if oil actually comes down below 70, I don't think I don't think the level of inflation there is going to be so dramatic to the point where we have to have a hike. Maybe we don't get a cut, even though I do think Kevin Warsh wants to give us a cut. But that whole hike nonsense has got to be off the table, dude. Unless this whole Iran thing flips, or unless there's a different type of inflation that's boiling underneath the surface. But it's not. When you look at CPI and PPI, 75% for the past 2 months on the print has been because of energy. That's from the BLS. It's not because of something else. Airline fares, all the different non-discretionary spending, all that comes down back to energy. So if energy is the key variable that changes it, maybe that keeps it going much higher. This was Jim Chanos, by the way, over the weekend. Here was his short case on the neoclouds.
If we turn our attention to the neoclouds, like CoreWeave or Nebius, it's even worse because those are, when you boil it down, those are equipment leasing businesses, right? They buy a chip from NVIDIA, and then they turn around and lease the chip to a hyperscaler or to a pure AI software company like Anthropic or OpenAI. And there the bet is on depreciation and whether or not you can get the chips from the supplier. So we were talking a little bit earlier, it gets back to the point that we've made to clients that anybody that's just a middleman in this chain, like the data center guys are, either as REITs or equipment leasing companies, should never trade at higher multiples than the company that controls their supply, Taiwan Semi and NVIDIA, AMD, and so on, right? They're price takers in all sense of the word. They're middlemen. And so it's really, we're at the point in the bull market where all of these stocks have gone to premium valuations. And I suspect at some point in the near intermediate future, we're going to start to get to the point in the market where people are going to begin to really analyze the business models and say, okay, what's special and what's a commodity?
What do people think? What do people think? Obviously, Chanos has had some very successful shorts. He's also had some very horrendous shorts. Tesla blew up his fund back in 2016. The most recent short he's called correctly is MicroStrategy. I mean, he's absolutely nailed that short. And granted, Bitcoin fell, so MSTR fell. So his short thesis kind of was not accurate. His short thesis was basically the premium of MNAV on MicroStrategy shouldn't exist, which is why we're shorting it. But that's not the reason why MicroStrategy fell. The reason MicroStrategy fell is because Bitcoin fell. The premium, came down, but it's not like the premium came down so substantially. It's not like Bitcoin's at 100,000 and MicroStrategy is at 100. If Bitcoin was at 100,000, MicroStrategy would still be pushing 300-400, which is when they shorted. So really, it was a bear case on Bitcoin that he got correct, even though the reasoning behind his bear case on MicroStrategy didn't correspond with Bitcoin going down, even though that's the reason Bitcoin went down. But in terms of the neoclouds, he's basically calling them expensive REITs, right? Yeah, he did buy Bitcoin. That's a good point. He did buy. I remember that interview. He said he was shorting MSTR and buying Bitcoin. So he made money on the MSTR short, but he kind of lost money on Bitcoin. That kind of proves why his thesis didn't pan out, right? The thesis was MSTR will go down, Bitcoin will go up. Both went down. So you made money on one side of it, but you lost money on the other side because, the thesis behind the short was wrong. But he's essentially saying the neoclouds are expensive REITs. They're building out all this land and equipment to rent out the GPUs. There's not a business model underneath the idea of literally renting out the GPUs. And, that's why the valuations here don't make sense when you look at the valuations compared to the actual companies designing the chips like a TSM, NVIDIA, AMD, et cetera. I don't think you immediately write that off because obviously these companies have to show progress and like real levels of growth to be able to make sense of why they're getting the premium. But I think there's two simple arguments that push back against what he's saying. The compute constraints are massive. And we saw this with memory. I mean, at the end of that clip, he said they're commodities. Memory was supposed to be a commodity too. And anyone who's thought that obviously has got it wrong. It is not turned into a commodity in the short term. Maybe one day we won't be compute constrained. Maybe that's in 5 months. Maybe that's in 5 years. I think Jensen's argument would be that's, a very long time away. But if we are, that's where capital will be going to and being allocated for. And then number two, when you look at Nebius and look at all the different parts of their business model and how they're trying to have distributed compute across many different companies become a hyperscaler in and of themselves by building a native AI cloud, not just become a partner to a Meta or an Amazon, that is a lot more exciting. Now, maybe not every neo cloud is going to do that. So you might have some that end up becoming investments that don't fully play out. But I think the biggest ones are trying to do that, which is why they've been more excited than not. Crossroads says he is right that NVIDIA is too cheap, though, but way better to just go long NVIDIA versus short data centers. Yeah, I mean, again, NVIDIA's valuation, I think, as Jensen said, is the eighth wonder of the world. The idea that this thing with their growth cannot get a premium bid. It's just so funny because, again, forget the market cap. If someone was saying, well, I don't know if NVIDIA can keep up this growth. It's like, okay, if you don't know if NVIDIA can keep up this growth, why the hell are you buying all of these other companies? Because inevitably their growth, if NVIDIA grows 20% next year instead of 80%, I mean, like Micron's not going to be growing that crazy either because their pricing power is going to dissipate. Like there's going to be Broadcom's not going to be growing. Like if NVIDIA is going to keep up the growth, they should get a multiple that rewards the growth. If you're giving a multiple that rewards the growth to the Cornings and Microns and Broadcoms and AMDs of the world. And if you have a bear case that NVIDIA's not going to keep up the growth, you could have a bear case for the whole market, but that's obviously not how Marvell or Qualcomm or any of these companies are being priced in. So imagine going imagine going long on those names with the compute constraints and the ability to grow is still important. Ethereum getting a nice bid right here, 1821. This was up 5.8%. As this one went green, yes, I believe it was indeed a gangster move from Jensen on raising. It was a bit of a flex from him. But also they have the capital to do it. They have the money to do it. And they also have the demand. The fact that there was 85 billion of demand for that 20 billion and they had to raise its 25 billion of issuances. Same thing reminds me of Google. There's just plenty of people that want to be partners with NVIDIA. Did you watch the UFC though? I watched a little bit of it last night. I thought it was absolutely epic. It was pretty freaking cool with the White House in the background. So I didn't watch the whole thing, but I thought it was pretty cool. CoreWeave, that's up a little bit right there. After hours, AMD, 547.26, as that was up a nice 7% on the day. Gold, pretty interesting stats on gold right here. Take a look at this chart. I know a couple people have been asking, could gold get ready to make a move now that the Iran war is over? Maybe the inflation hedge thesis, it turns into a risk on thesis. Gold funds posted 3 billion of outflows last week. This brings the 4-week average of outflows to 2 billion, the second largest on record. And this is only below the 3.5 billion 4-week average, which was seen in February after gold topped out around June 30th. GLD, which is the BlackRock fund for gold, has seen 8 billion of outflows, on track for the first annual withdrawal since 2023. So sentiment on gold, just in terms of the flows that are coming in, I don't think it could be more bearish, especially given the Iran war theoretically is over. Now, I know people would say, well, the bull case for gold was the Iran war because that would be the hedge against inflation. So if inflation is going away, gold goes down. But what if that's the bull case? Instead of that being the bear case for gold right now, what if it turns into a risk on asset, which we kind of did back in January? You didn't have the Iran war in January, and you still saw gold go up. And the Venezuela stuff was only like a couple of days. I don't think that was enough to pump it that high. Or do we see people getting out of gold and saying, hey, it's time for Bitcoin? You know? And maybe that is the rotation that I think many more people have been waiting for. Can there be a SpaceX price spike due to options trading? I think it is very possible. I also think there could be a lot of people. Right now, it's really hard to short SpaceX. Wow, 194 after hours. The shares are incredibly hard to borrow. And I think market makers haven't fully established positions that make it easy for people to, like, it's really easy to short NVIDIA, short Tesla. You just borrow the shares. But those are more mature. SpaceX has 2 days of being a public company. It needs to mature a little bit for shares to easily be accessible to borrow to short them. So the shorts haven't really had their way yet. I think you probably have some shorting, but I don't think it's substantial enough yet. As the options come out tomorrow, you have more put flow coming in. If people want to pair those with their shorts, then maybe that creates a downside move versus an upside move. But then you might get a bunch of people just saying, well, calls. You have 250 calls, 270 calls, $300 calls just being bought immediately. I mean, maybe it could be aggressive. Yes, the 2x ETFs are out as well. Options do open tomorrow. I believe they'll be open as soon as the market opens. So at 9:30, you should be able to get it. Hard to borrow shares on a high IPO means brokers are going to crush stock lending revenue this quarter. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, the brokerages must be loving this. So that's another reason Robinhood's probably getting some love. I mean, literally they had to add a few new engineers. I saw some LinkedIn posts for Robinhood to navigate all the trading, and the website got, I think it went down for like 20 minutes on Friday. There was just so much volume coming in. So these IPOs are incredibly bullish for the toll booths of the IPOs, which are the brokerages. And if they instill more excitement, then we should probably be seeing a lot more trading volumes. Also, there was about 1.3 million of calls, 130 for Hood. This is for expiry July 17th. July 17th. That was some of your option flow for Mr. Robinhood. I thought this clip was really interesting. So we talked about the UK social media ban. Here's what happened today. It's been going kind of viral, but they asked a girl in a classroom, what does she think about it? And here's what she had to say.
Heard the Prime Minister say no more social media for you.
I didn't think it would actually happen. I kind of believed that he'd chicken out of it and give it more time or more consideration, but he seems pretty sure of it, and I'm not sure if I agree with him.
What are you most worried about?
Not being able to contact my friends. I don't know what will happen and how it will happen, or whether if there's some technicalities to what apps are restricted, but I use most of my social media to contact my parents and family.
I mean, I think it's worth reminding people, earlier we looked at screen time. What was your screen time over the weekend?
9 hours.
9 hours. So suddenly you're going to have a lot more time to fill. And what will you do?
Stare at a wall.
I mean, dude, it was pretty funny. Yeah, I was expecting a British accent as well. It has to be some private school or something. It sounded like an American that was talking. They might just be living in the UK. But stare at a wall. I mean, I agree, bro. You take away my internet, you take away my Wi-Fi, take away my X, my YouTube. What else am I going to do? Stare at a freaking wall, dude. In all seriousness, I don't know how good it's going to be for kids from a mental health perspective if they can't communicate with each other and like be on social media, talk with their friends. But there is plenty of studies that say social media is horrible, especially for kids who are young. So, there's a reason why China has banned it for a long time for their kids. So maybe this is what parents agree with in the UK. I don't know if that would ever be able to really fly in the United States, but it is officially happening in the UK. Read a book. Kids don't read that much anymore. So I don't know if that's going to happen here. But yeah, they're definitely going to have to figure out how to do something different. Iran, we got some reports. The lifting of the U.S. naval blockade has been put into operation. Okay. Looks like that is happening. That means the Strait of Hormuz should be opening as well. If the blockade, I don't think it's opened yet. I think we'll see the traffic tomorrow if it opens by tonight. And if that's case, now Trump said it's open. Trump also said the blockade is done and it's gone. But we have to see when that officially becomes real. When I was her age, I was smoking weed and being a delinquent. Snapchat doesn't seem that bad. You know, it's interesting because some kids in this generation are way more degenerate than previous generations, and then other generations, because they didn't have social media, you know, did a lot more crazy stuff because they didn't get to scroll on Snapchat all day. So I guess it's different perspectives on when you grew up. Google right there, 369.35. As that continues, a little bit green after ours. Are we selling Micron on today's pop or no? I think at this point, dude, if you're in Micron, you got to believe this thesis is taking it to 2 trillion. I mean, it's already at 1.23 trillion. At first, people said it couldn't get over a trillion. Now it's at 1.2. I mean, is it going to be that surprising if it gets to 2 trillion, given the memory shortage to last for a very, very long time? U.S. official told Axios that the full text of the Memorandum of Understanding will be released in the next 24 to 48 hours. 24 to 48 hours. What if Iran says we were just kidding? Well, if that's the case, there's going to be an awkward MOU that comes out. Or again, Iranian state media last night said that they said that the MOU, they were like, they were trying to frame to their people, we pressured the United States into signing the peace deal. So the fact that the Iranian state media told their people that we won, we pressured the U.S. into signing the deal. Obviously, the U.S. had the opposite perspective, that we won the war. We got them to sign the deal. The point is, both sides are at least in agreement that a deal is being signed as a conceptual framework. And hopefully that's what allows the markets to continue going a bit higher. All right, folks, let's bring on a special guest to the show that I talked about on the Market Open. I have been a fan of this person for a while from afar. Very excited that we have the chance to talk to him. Delian, he's the co-founder, president, and chairman of Varda Space Industries, a company building space-based manufacturing for pharmaceuticals and advanced materials. Delian is also a partner at Founders Fund, which obviously was a very early investor in SpaceX. So very excited to pick his brain on SpaceX and the entire space industry. Delian, thanks for joining the stream.
Thanks for having me, Amit. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you jumping on. I know we haven't met before and you don't know too much about me, but essentially do a market open, market close stream, kind of like a millennial version of CNBC or Bloomberg every day, and have a lot of retail investors watching. You obviously are an investor. You're also an operator. So really excited that you took the time to join the show. I'll hit you with this first question because this is the number one question that retail investors have been asking me in my community. And I'm just really curious for your perspective as someone who's really early SpaceX. How do you make sense of the valuation at $2.5 trillion, and how do you think of the future prospects for it over the next decade?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I want to, sort of clarify very much so, like, sort of personal, sort of opinions. I don't want to say that I'm like representing the, sort of firm or anybody else, but, I think there's two ways you can, sort of look at this. One is, from the founder, Elon is clearly, this generation's greatest entrepreneur, and now with this IPO has the largest balance sheet that he's ever had access to, and he's somebody that clearly is able to take balance sheet and deploy that in a differentiated way relative to literally anyone else. I think the fact that sort of Google is renting compute from him rather than trying to figure out how to build up all of their own compute. And then again, a part of it.
Delian, real quick, are you using the computer mic or is it an external one?
Oh, it's the computer mic. Do you want me to like put on headphones or something? Is this
that would be amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we will fix that up right there. Yeah, that it's just buzzing a lot, so I'm going to fix it.
Let me see if I'll set these. How's that? Any better? Test.
That is absolutely perfect. Amazing.
Cool. Okay, cool. Sorry, I'll have a little bit of this cable sticking out for a little bit. He's so clearly an entrepreneur where you give him a large balance sheet, even relative to other sort of mega successful and productive companies like Google. They're like obviously renting compute from him, which speaks to the fact that they don't feel confident in their own ability to build up to sort of that level. And there's a very large opportunity set in front of them. I think Starlink still has a lot of room to go on, sort of maritime, D2C, aviation. There's also a huge opportunity in front of them. I'm not a big, sort of public sort of trader and, focus most of my book on privates, but I think there's clearly an opportunity here to take the entire market cap of, sort of AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, et cetera. And, over the course of the next, sort of call it 10 years, there's no reason why Starlink shouldn't be able to capture all of that, right? These devices are not particularly high bandwidth. Most of what you care about is basically having, sort of global, sort of coverage and being able to do that with relatively low power. Satellites are a strictly superior solution, especially if you can eventually convince Apple to put a phased array antenna in one of these things, a strictly superior solution relative to traditional cell towers. So, even if you don't believe in some of the space-based data centers, the lunar stuff, et cetera, if you just look at the sort of room to run they have directly in front of them in terms of terrestrial ability to build out data centers faster than anybody else from the XAI side of things, and then on Starlink continuing to build out basically one of the best telecommunications businesses of all time, that I think shows a lot of sort of growth potential. And then when you think about the valuation, obviously a lot of it comes from sort of that growth potential. Now, again, I want to clarify, I'm not a big publics guy. I don't I'm much better with sort of technology and engineering than I am with spreadsheets and DCF models. And so that's why I like to focus on investing in companies that are below 30 million in valuation, and then ride the way up and bet on tech trends more so than sort of DCF models.
Well, that's part of the reason I wanted to talk to you. You are not looking at the price to sales or the price to earnings ratio as the basis for having an investment thesis. As a VC, you tend to bet early and you let it ride. When did you, when did the fund invest in SpaceX? Or were you around when they invested into SpaceX?
I was in middle school when they first invested in SpaceX, so definitely sort of wasn't around. I want to say the original check was 08 or 09 maybe, but I may also be misremembering. But yeah, it was originally led by this guy Luke Nosek, who was one of the co-founders of Founders Fund, and sort of really doubled down at a time where nobody else in the Valley was thinking that something like this was even remotely investable. Luke has since left the fund and now runs his own fund called Gigascale, where a lot of the focus is just continuing to invest into SpaceX. Obviously, he's done very well because of that. But then over the years, I think in everything but one or two funds of SpaceX's, we've basically continued to, one or two funds of Founders Fund, we've continued to invest in SpaceX, sort of all the way, sort of through to the IPO. So we're definitely one of the largest shareholders.
My chat is loving you, by the way, because I speak really fast. But
oh, sorry. I can slow down a little bit if you need me.
No, it's good. I've trained them to listen, so they can keep up. It's great. It's amazing. But you're faster than me, which is phenomenal. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to double down a bit on Starlink. Obviously, $2.5 trillion company. You're talking about AT&T, Verizon, the multiples on those being consumed. Forgetting space data centers, which we'll talk about in a second. In terms of Starlink, do you think the opportunity is that they could provide broadband internet access and connectivity to basically everyone on the planet, and that's what the market is seeing as the opportunity?
I think I'm not sure what the entire market is obviously sort of thinking. I do think also there's a two parlay trade you can make to this, which is both long SpaceX and short the entire basket of the traditional telcos. But when you think about what it's required to build a telco in the United States, it's basically infrastructure, spectrum bandwidth, and then direct to consumer sort of brand. In telcos, sometimes those have gotten decoupled a little bit, right? Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, et cetera, are largely reliant on this company called, I think it's American Tower, right, is the name of it. That is the infrastructure layer. Verizon, et cetera, are effectively just the brands plus the spectrum, owners. American Tower basically runs the infrastructure. SpaceX clearly has an ability to do all three. Elon is a phenomenal marketer, can absolutely create his own direct to consumer, basically brand. The infrastructure, they can entirely basically own themselves via Starlink. And then with the, and I forget the name, was it EchoStar acquisition? Clearly have the spectrum that they need to, basically go do this. And so, they have all the groundwork laid. Probably just, again, the biggest thing that's, sort of in some ways missing is right now, and again, I'm not a RF guy, but my understanding is right now, satellite connectivity with these is higher power relative to the cell towers. But if you manage to get a phased array antenna into, sort of one of these or start to get the Starlink, background power so high, that eventually it becomes basically equivalent to the cell tower, and then at that point you have all the ingredients you need to basically go capture. I mean, I think the basket of those companies is worth on the order of $600-700 billion. You have the ability to both capture that, likely higher growth, because you can also do international in a way that you can't with some of these other sort of providers. It's not Verizon is a phenomenal international business, and so if you bundle together all the European, African sort of telcos as well, you start to get into something that I think is clearly justifies the growth rate that people are projecting from Starlink alone.
Have you looked at AST Space Mobile or any of some of those competitors that are out there?
Lightly, again, I'm not a Publix guy, so not deeply. I think, man, just hard to there's clearly obviously sort of Varda plays in the sort of space ecosystem, but the sort of story or analogy or anecdote that I always use with when I talk to investors about Varda is we are in the equivalent of the mid 90s with sort of Microsoft, or late 90s, where it's they are the mega elephant, and if you want to play, you got to make sure that you know where the elephant is stomping. I think better to sort of be somewhere where they're not. I have a hard time seeing the ASTSs of the world capturing a significant sort of market share relative to just the fact that SpaceX is so vertically integrated. They're the largest satellite producer in the world. They have a bunch of the spectrum. Yeah, it's not to say that there's not some value to be had there. Even if SpaceX ends up with 98% market share in satellite internet, it's not to say that the 2% share is irrelevant in terms of value. But in terms of sort of size in the same way, that seems just so difficult. Especially Starship and the Starship versions of Starlinks get online. My God, those things are going to be 10 to 100x in terms of cost differential, performance differential.
Okay, so let's get into Varda. From the background I've read about you, so first of all, Varda is a microgravity-enabled life sciences company that processes materials in orbit and returns them to Earth. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in terms of how cool that is. But I've read about you in your past, and just from seeing some of your tweets, you are super inspired by this idea of colonizing space and having interplanetary species. I imagine Interstellar has got to be up there, top 5 movies for you. So can you talk a little bit about the inspiration for Varda and realistically, how big is this TAM for rocket launches, space connectivity, micro bioprocessing? How big do you think this industry can become over the next decade?
Yeah, I mean, I have been thinking about this business and this industry for, basically since middle school, just got obsessed with, as SpaceX was starting to succeed. I also come with this, my family, sort of fled Bulgaria after the fall of the Soviet Union. And so I have this very anti-socialist, anti-state mentality. And so you combine that plus sci-fi, just got obsessed with what does the industrialization of space looks like? Because that's what felt like it was going to be the thing that lifted us, sort of to the stars, not just being reliant on larger rockets, state budgets for exploration, but instead the invisible hand being the thing that lifts us to the stars. And so, NASA and others have published tons of research papers about all the potential ideas of what could work up there, everything from helium-3 refinement on the moon, lunar ice mining, asteroid mining. And I sort of, stumbled into this field around in-space manufacturing. And a part of why I got particularly obsessed with that field was because in some ways it's the simplest supply chain. You're basically taking precursor materials from the surface of the Earth, taking them up into low Earth orbit, where we've been many times, fabricating something higher quality in microgravity, bringing it back down. That is much simpler than going to the moon, going to an asteroid, et cetera. And so felt like it was naturally going to be the first thing to commercialize. Throughout my career, there's a handful of times that I debated working on it full time. I almost didn't even go to college at all and was going to work on the first generation of companies that got started in 2011, 12 timeframe. But ultimately decided at the time, it still felt like it was a little bit more science project and ready for commercialization. Again, in 2016, took it seriously. And then in 2019, finally got convinced that hey, the time is finally now for something like this to get commercialized. 2 core reasons why. The first was basically there's a Falcon 9 booster that launched and landed 4 times in a row. And that thing from Starlink to ASTS to Viasat, Eutelsat, name your favorite business that makes money in space. It's either internet or, basically Earth observation, taking photos. And in that world, launch is mostly a CapEx, right? If you take a Viasat Geocom satellite, 30-year lifespan, lots of revenue you can generate. If your rocket launch gets delayed by 4 or 5 months, if it ends up being, call it 20% over budget, that for sure hits your DCF, but does not break the DCF because it's a CapEx line item, right? You can justify, sort of more investment into it. If you think about what we do, which is we produce pharmaceutical product for publicly traded pharma, it's very much so an OpEx. And if we have a 6-month delay, if we have a 20% over budget, I can guarantee you, we just announced that United Therapeutics is one of our, sort of first, sort of customers, $25 billion in market cap. They're running a phase 3 clinical trial with us as their drug producer, and we're 6 months delayed. They might not be first to file anymore. They might lose out on market share. They might be losing out on the IP patent window that they have on that, particular drug product. Zero chance that they're going to, sort of come back to us, right? And so, and obviously I didn't know at the time at the time in 2019 that this was going to happen one day. But I was thinking like, hey, I need launch to be reliable. So that was, sort of part one that convinced me. And then part two was Merck in 2019 published this paper basically showing that they took their blockbuster drug up to the International Space Station, massively improved the performance of it. And so to be clear, like this microgravity life sciences sort of idea, it's not unique to Varda. Like, there was a paper from NASA in 1969 that basically hypothesized about, hey, after Apollo, what should we get up to next with like Skylab, et cetera. This was basically one of the ideas of like, hey, what if we make like protein crystals basically in space? That kept being worked on for the next like 40, 50 years effectively. But, finally, with the advent of reusable rockets, it felt like it could transition from like government run lab with astronauts on board that is like very expensive, more like, papers that come out of it to in 2019. I was like, whoa, you have rockets that finally make it so that this like business model is doable. Merck clearly showed not just like a random drug, but like literally their best drug, Keytruda, $25 billion a year in revenue, like represents a third of their market cap. And I felt like you had this moment where it's like Elon was the Carnegie, built the railroad to space. Merck basically showed their oil fields. And I was like, where's the Rockefeller that's going to go build the oil rigs and go pump this? And to me, it was very obvious what the pumping infrastructure looked like. It's like Starlink satellites, but rather than internet radios on board, just have like bioreactors and basically precursor ingredients. And then the one unique thing that you really need is like, unlike everybody else that operates in space, like Viasat, et cetera, they beam down their like value to Earth via radio waves. Here you have like physical product you got to bring back down. And so you do need these like, some reentry pods that bring it back down. So that's what I originally, actually, for what it's worth, I went out as an investor. I'm allocator, is like, how I think of myself primarily. Tried to find management teams working on it. Couldn't find anybody doing it the right way. And so ultimately realized like, man, I like don't want to be here 5 years later and there's still nobody doing it. And so at some point I just got to like go build the management team myself. On TAM, look, the way that I like to describe, obviously, I think there's a very large TAM, and people talked a lot about, in the connectivity space. I think it's, pretty well understood, like what's possible potentially on the moon. I think in microgravity life sciences, it's still not like a well understood, sort of market. And so here's the, sort of way or, sort of analogy that I use to help you understand what the TAM looks like. Being able to manipulate gravity as one of the process knobs in making a pharmaceutical is as fundamental of a like process knob as something like temperature. Like if you think about it in the 1910s, we invented refrigerators for the first time ever. Because of that, the like very nascent pharmaceutical industry in the United States could now run pharmaceutical processes at below room temperature rather than like just above on a consistent basis. That obviously led to a whole set of drugs that were only possible in like, sort of cold chain production, including, for what it's worth, even modern drugs like, the Pfizer COVID vaccine, when it first came out, required cold chain production and cold chain distribution. They eventually, figured out a coating that like, made it so that it only required cold chain production and then, could survive room temperature afterwards. But like, clearly there are times where a drug being cold makes the drug work and makes it better, right? Now, it's not to say like take some random drug and make it cold, it like somehow makes it better. Like you got to like engineer around the cold. You got to figure out like, oh, maybe with like methanol, it being cold actually makes the drug better versus like if you have ethanol as the solvent, doesn't make it better. Same thing with microgravity. Like, Merck showed this blockbuster use case with Keytruda, but that is like one drug, one way of using, microgravity. There are many different drug modalities, many different drug structures, and the way that you use the drug requires engineering. And so, why did we like close this deal with United Therapeutics? Is because Varda has become an expert, not just in like flying spacecraft. Many people know how to do that, but we're also experts in figuring out how to build the actual like bioreactors, bioprocessing equipment that can go do that work. But then also the like process engineering on like, how do you apply this tool of gravity, which is a very generic tool, to your very particular drug modality, the problem set that you're looking to, sort of go solve. I think temperature has a very large TAM in pharma. Now that mostly got distributed to everybody because the refrigerators are relatively commoditized and sort of low margin. I think our refrigerator, which requires going 14,000 miles an hour and going up to space, is a little less commoditized, and so I think there'll be a little more value capture by the refrigerator sort of maker. But I think it is pretty large. There's a lot of fridges in pharmaceutical production facilities, and so they clearly use it a lot. I think that there will be, quite a broad set of usage, for, gravity as well, and our microgravity fridges, which happen to be satellites.
But it also sounds like what you're trying to do is what people have been thinking about, as you've said, for the past 50 years in space. It's not just rocket launches. It's not just connectivity. Quite frankly, just hearing it off the top of my head, it feels like this is $1 trillion vision. Like, have you been able to convince investors when raising money, and has SpaceX's success kind of helped when it comes to raising money to convince them of this vision?
Yeah, I'd say I don't think at any point in Varda's life, there's maybe some time period in like the dearth of the venture capital market in like, early 22 through mid 24, where like, we didn't fundraise a lot then. We also didn't need capital, but like other than that, I would say I don't think there's ever been a time where I felt like capital has been a constraint to sort of Varda's progress. Obviously a bit of it is helping. It helps having a venture capitalist, obviously as a co-founder, that's very effective in navigating capital markets. But yes, I think generally investors have been convinced that generally, obviously the pharmaceutical industry is quite large. Like the way that I like to describe it is like people talk about oh my God, it's so large. This Anthropic deal that SpaceX did. And that is large. At the same time, like Keytruda last year for Merck did $25 billion in revenue. And so I think sometimes tech and aerospace investors underappreciate, sort of how large the TAM is in pharma. And then also generally the technology that we're bringing into that very large TAM is very, sort of broadly applicable. And so, I do think we have, a lot of room to run, with this vision, let alone over time as we start to, pharma is not the only material where microgravity can have an effect. There's applications in semiconductors, fiber optic cables that are, I think more likely than not, we look less full stack in those categories. Like in pharma, we're going to go very full stack. And then in, semiconductors in 7 years, maybe we look more like a contract manufacturer for TSMC, where we're very good at the logistics. We're very good at making process equipment in microgravity, running it, but we aren't, sort of fundamentally the end developer of the, sort of material. We're just, sort of partnering with them.
I love it. Dalian, thank you for being on. We appreciate it. I want to do some quick rapid fire. I'm just going to name a phrase, might be a company, a person, and then give me 20 to 30 seconds of your thoughts on each of those. If you guys want to follow him, Dalian's Twitter right there. Thank you for coming on the show and deeply, deeply appreciate it. Also linking Varda Space Industries for those that want to check out his company. Okay, let's start off. Alex Karp.
Brilliant, esoteric, sort of genius. I do think they have room to run as people are thinking about, hey, my token usage is out of control. Maybe I do need somebody at the application layer to help me figure out how to implement AI, and they're very good at implementation.
Anduril.
I think many people wanted to be the Anduril of X, and it turns out the Anduril of X was just Anduril. And so, I think they're going to be the power law winner in that category. It's not to say there might not be just a handful of others. And obviously, the Stephen Freibergs and Emil Michaels of the world have it as their mandate to make sure that there's 5 or 6 Andurils. But I think Anduril is going to be 80% of that market share.
Rocket Lab.
I think that it is a national security priority for many people in the U.S. government to ensure that we don't have a sole source provider in launch. There's also potentially opportunity in medium launch, as Elon has talked about, sort of decreasing the production and flight cadence of the Falcon 9. Rocket Lab, other than SpaceX, is the only company that has regularly flown, now has a mega balance sheet, obviously with their $5 billion, sort of cap raise. And doesn't have rockets that explode, particularly often, especially relative to some others in the sort of category. And so, one of my freaking partners, here at FF, asked me for stock recommendation 2 years ago in aerospace, and I was like, well, the only one I could possibly recommend is Rocket Lab. I should have taken my own recommendation and bought some in my retail book. My problem is I'm just so focused on privates, but man, it's been his best performing pick in his portfolio. So should have charged some carry on that.
Yeah, a lot of retail has been excited for Rocket Lab since it was $5, and obviously, Peter Beck has executed, so the story's been incredible. Anthropic.
Quite the weekend. I think that probably buy the poly market odds, which is I think it's something like 60% chance that it's unbanned by so next Monday. So I think more of a hiccup than anything sort of long term existential. But if I were OpenAI, now would be the time to release another model.
Okay, last two. Peter Thiel.
Greatest investor, thinker, and macro predictor, of all time. Very grateful that he's the head honcho over here.
All right, and last one, Mr. Elon Musk.
Greatest entrepreneur, that we probably effectively ever seen. And I did there's some tweet that I saw this past weekend. There was something along the lines of over the last 15, 20 years, the richest person in the world, sometimes it's been somebody that makes luxury handbags. Sometimes it's been somebody that makes consumer social networks. I feel pretty good about the state of the world. If the richest person in the world is somebody that makes reusable rockets, electric cars, neural implants that help paraplegics, that feels like a pretty good outcome.
Yeah, Chamath had this take back in 2021 when Elon wasn't, or he was the richest person in the world, but he obviously wasn't near anywhere 1.3 trillion. And his argument, which I agree to, is shouldn't the richest person in the world be someone who creates this much value for humanity? And
yeah, agreed.
Dalian, thank you so much. We appreciate it. The chat loved you. I put his Twitter in the chat, and hopefully we'll have you on the show again in the future.
Thanks, Amit. Great to meet you. Cheers, man.
Thank you, Delian. Later.
Bye.
Okay. There we go, folks. That was fun. That was really fun. It's so funny. The guest we had on, I think it was Wednesday of last week, just talked very slow. And Delian, I loved it. He talked fast, but I loved it because he was just flowing, bro. He was in a flow state. He had like a billion different ideas just coming out there. And they were cohesive, For some people, it's hard to keep on. But the fact that it was faster than me was impressive. I mean, it was faster than how I talk every day. Like, kind of jealous, to be honest. I think I might challenge myself to be even faster tomorrow. But again, he's also so rooted in his industry, right? So he knows what the hell he's talking about. And that's why he's able to talk as much as that. Dude, I think you guys in the comments, I'm trying to bring a guest on the show and diversify the content from just me yapping because I care about you guys. I want to bring more perspectives, more ideas, more diversity. And you guys just want to find a way to make me laugh the whole time. Like it's really, there's like maybe 5% of you that actually appreciate a guest on the show and like want their insights. And the other 95% is like, how do we make Amit laugh while this guy is talking? Because we don't care about what the person is saying, even though what they're saying is very valuable to the current times, which in this case is SpaceX. So it's great. I have to get used to it. Dude, he could talk fast, bro. He could talk freaking fast. Like that was fast, dude. Even when he started, I was like, oh, hold on here. I got to put on my like debate thinking personality to follow him. Because when you judge debate rounds, those kids talk like 500 words a minute. Like that was fast. But look, in general, I thought it was really cool perspective because he has been, involved in space for a very long time. And, when he describes Varda, it makes you think like, dude, could this become $1 trillion TAM / company / multi-trillion-dollar opportunity for every space name that's out there? And obviously makes sense why he was bullish Rock Lab years ago. Like there's just so many different moving parts to space. Now, does SpaceX deserve this valuation? Obviously, I would say no. He's more of a private guy, so he's not caring about the day-to-day price to earnings ratio. SpaceX up a little bit more after hours, but he's excited. And I think space continues to bring excitement. I appreciate you, Amit, but we are immature. No, I know. I'm immature too, but like the part that I can never get over is when I brought on Devin Ryan and you guys said, is this Tucker Carlson in his bathroom? Like, because it did look like he was in a bathroom and he does kind of have a Tucker Carlson type of haircut. That shit, I think I literally had to like stop the screen for a second to I had to like look down or something. I was just like, all right, that comment, that one got me. But no, it's good. I want to have more perspectives. I want to have cooler people on. I want to have different people. It's just, again, not every guest is going to be able to speak to an audience in the perfect way because that's not what they do for a living, right? So my job as the host is to try to make them comfortable to be able to get their thoughts out there. He just caught me off guard how fast it was. I loved it though. I freaking loved it. I was just like, oh, this is like, we're going. Like he's going to be going back and forth. So anyway, I thought it was interesting that he said also that, he doesn't give a shit about the SpaceX valuation. And I think a lot of people that are buying this shit don't care about it. I mean, like, if it really is this massive vision for where the future can go, yeah. I mean, a $2.5 trillion, if you think this is going to be 20, 30 trillion, Ron Barron today said he bought $1 billion worth of it on Friday. I just also, the logical part of my brain steps in and says, this shit cannot hold this type of valuation when the market is discounting so much growth in other parts of the economy that are trading at much more reasonable valuations. And something's going to break it eventually, but does it break at 250 and it goes back to 192? It's like, okay, that's an ugly decline, but it's still up a lot from 135, which means it's not that crazy. He did say go long SpaceX and short tech. Well, he said short Verizon, AT&T, the bucket of all those stocks when he was talking about communications, which, I mean, look, I don't know if that would work out per se, but obviously that market cap can be capitalized in a variety of different ways. One thing I thought was interesting is he's not that bullish ASTS. Now, obviously, early SpaceX guy, so why would he be bullish ASTS, one of their competitors? But he kind of classified it as they might get 2% of the market and SpaceX gets 98%, which is the constant bear case that I've heard as well about ASTS, which is, yeah, it's a massive market, but can they compete with SpaceX? And I think there's a lot of pushback against that if you look at all the partnerships and different places that they play in. But obviously, I think you're going to have SpaceX maxis that get created over the coming years as SpaceX continues to be public. I made some people are calling for 500 on SpaceX. Yeah, see, like that would put it at more than Nvidia's market cap, 5.4 trillion. Like, I don't know, but it's kind of fun to see it go up. Like, it's kind of, as long as you're not in it and you're not worried about if it's going to go back down, right? Like, it's kind of fun to just see how high can it go. And you just have to make sure you don't get caught in it. But it is kind of cool. I mean, it's cooler than this thing tanking. So I don't know eventually if it is going to tank, but if it normalizes around this range, I mean, Tesla's basically been stuck the whole year from 380 to 400. Maybe SpaceX gets stuck between 150 and 220. But just given the volatility, maybe that is not at all where it's planning to stop. Obviously, yeah, you do have the lockups that eventually will end as well. Coinbase did the same. Yeah, but Coinbase wasn't as cool as SpaceX. SpaceX is cool. By the way, 11 leveraged SpaceX ETFs came out today from 7 different issuers. Oh, no, they were filed today. So you have 2x long. You have 2x short. Oh, you have 2x long and 2x short from a bunch of different companies. You have Granite shares, Pro shares, leverage shares. You have all these direction shares. You have all these different companies putting out their version of the ETF. But you've got a lot of them that are stacking up. When is the lockup end? Honestly, I don't know. I feel like it's in the next month. I don't think it's in June. I think it's going to take at least 3 to 4 weeks, if not a month or so. But obviously, when it does happen, it's going to be a bit more aggressive. Varda does have a deal with Rocket Lab. That is correct. So that's another reason why Dalian knew them pretty well. I want to talk as fast as him, bro. It's a challenge. I mean, I have certain like moments where for like maybe a minute and a half, I can get into my flow state and I'm talking as fast and it's like actually making sense and it's cohesive. But the majority of the 3 hours on the stream, it's like a little bit more calm. But that guy just was going. When is SpaceX earnings? In 80 days. In 80 days. How many shares were traded today on SpaceX? 247 million. Yeah, in about 79 days. We'll get an earnings. Dude, earnings is going to be crazy. It's fun for all of us because we get to experience it, right? But it is absolutely going to be crazy. And it's just going to be another event that we look forward to in the markets. Amit is rattled. This guy talked faster than him. I am. There's not that many people that can talk faster than me, bro. There's really not. I pride myself on it. But also, you have to be coherent when you're talking fast. Talking fast for the hell of it doesn't help. I mean, again, I've seen like streams where the person's talking slow, and I can't stand it because, I mean, time is money. There's so much to get through, especially in the markets. There's just so much shit to discuss, right? So we got to speed it up. Any other major macro news that we missed? Oh, yeah, Qualcomm. So Cactus put this out when Delian was here. Qualcomm is buying Tenstorrent, $10 billion. It's a private company, AI chip startup. Interesting. They're buying a chip company, which the bull case is cool. Data center chips for Qualcomm, put a premium on it. The bear case is, why does Qualcomm need to buy a chip company if they have this magic data center chip that they keep saying is going to be, a big moneymaker? We still haven't figured out what is the big data center chip Qualcomm is going to use to double from here, right? I know that's what people are saying is the bull case. Now, maybe this acquisition helps them get there, or maybe it's an attempt to get there. But that was the news right here. Is that Jim Keller's company? I don't know. Let me find out. Yes, it is Jim Keller's company. I've never heard of Tenstorrent, to be honest. I'm pulling up the website right now. Oh, wow. It's headquartered in New Jersey. There's a lot of shit in New Jersey, bro. We get called New York's armpit. There's a lot of shit here. We build together experts in the field of computer architecture, ASIC design, advanced systems, and neural network compilers to build next generation of computing. Jim Keller is the CEO. He served 2 years as senior vice president of Intel Silicon Engineering Group. Was he at Tesla before? No, he was at AMD before. No, he was at Tesla. He has held roles of Tesla's vice president of Autopilot. He was a chief core architect at AMD. I've never heard of this guy, but actually, I feel like I've heard of his name. I definitely couldn't tell you what he did, but I feel like his name, Jim Keller, that sounds familiar. Interesting. So this would be a 70% premium. Oh, shit. Whoa. Interesting. SpaceX from their SEC filing just now. We do not intend to release any quarterly or annual financial results or other materials through wire distribution services. We will announce material information to the public primarily through investor relations and via our X account. Huh. That means Bloomberg's not going to get access to that juicy SpaceX numbers when they go public, or not when they go, when they give you earnings. Bloomberg, Newswire, CNBC. I wonder what's the logic behind this. Why would they do this? What's the point of that? Like, it's a public company. Your number is going to have to go public no matter where you put it out from. There's no way they're doing this to drive traffic to X. That would be crazy, bro. There's no freaking way. I mean, maybe Elon's like, if you want to see our numbers, you better make an X account. Maybe. SpaceX will announce material information to the public primarily through investor relations page and on its X account. Bro, but there's no way they're using the earnings to push X. I mean, you could do the call on X. You could do a video call on X. That would get a lot of people. The results are the results. Like, this is the stock market. The results have to come out. You can't hide the results in your one platform. Like, you're a public company. That is so weird. To prevent institutional edge. I mean, maybe, but like the institutions are going to trade it up or down no matter what. I mean, like, I don't know. That's interesting. I don't hate it. It's just kind of weird. Like, you're a big boy company. You put out the results. Everyone gets it. Next time only for premium X users. Yeah, you got to pay $50 a month to get access to it. That is a little weird. And that's official. That's not a rumor. That's in the SEC filing. SpaceX does not intend to release quarterly or annual financial results or other material news through wire distribution services. Do you have to pay to get your content as a public company distributed through Bloomberg? I don't think you have to. I'm trying to wonder, are they trying to save costs here or something? I don't. Well, that means also it's not just earnings, though. Every time there's a big press release, that means it's going to be through X. Maybe it is to get people on X, man. Maybe they have a lot of announcements coming up and they want it to be seen through X. And theoretically, it helps SpaceX because SpaceX owns X, right? Some wire services charge a fee. Trump administration considers a $300 billion fund for Iran if the deal is upheld. Oh, shit. That's actually big news. Financial Times, Trump admin is considering $300 billion in a new fund for Iran if the current deal is upheld. That would be a $300 billion reconstruction fund, I would imagine. Dude, that would basically mean a lot of companies would get some big contracts from the government to help rebuild Iran, right? That would be, they did this for Ukraine. But Ukraine wasn't 300 billion. I think Ukraine was like 10 billion. BlackRock and JP Morgan were sponsoring that. Maybe that's the reparations. Dude, if that's the case, Iran definitely got what they wanted. It's just Trump might be framing it through a fund. Now, technically, I don't know if it, well, even if you give like Boeing, I'm just making it up, Boeing a contract to help rebuild Iran in some capacity, Iran is getting the net result of the reparation of the country being rebuilt, even if Boeing's getting the net dollars. And at the end of the day, as taxpayers, we're the ones still paying for it if the U.S. is giving. So, I mean, technically it is a reparation. It's good for Boeing, but, you know, Boeing wouldn't have anything to do if there wasn't a war to begin with in the first place. Now, are they going to give money to Iranian companies to rebuild the country? I doubt it. I do not think this administration would just give them $300 billion to go rebuild. I'm pretty sure it'll be done via U.S. either defense contractors or construction companies. But, well, now, I mean, dude, if that's legit, that's part of the reason Iran probably signed that MOU digitally, as per JD Vance, yesterday. I mean, if the U.S. says, hey, we're definitely going to rebuild the country with $300 billion allocated, maybe Trump Towers coming in Iran. Oh, my gosh. Maybe that's part of it. By the way, here's the Bank of America analyst who's been screaming at her clients to sell stocks. Here's what she had to say today about this rally.
COVID, it all sounds fine to me. So what is that argument missing?
Yeah, let's talk about it. So look, I'm not outright bearish on stocks, and I think there are a lot of really great places to go within the S&P 500. If you had to buy one index today, I would buy the Russell Large Cap Value Index. But I do think that we are at a point where it's really difficult to continue to clock gains from here. And the reasons are manifold. One, I mean, the good news is priced in. Typically years where you've got great earnings growth and GDP growth are not the best years for equity returns. Two, you're starting to see multiple compression in areas like tech. We're seeing supply demand dynamics change. I know we've all been talking about that recently. But even at the beginning of the year, we started to see buybacks slow down demonstrably within certain areas of that hyperscaler space. The shrinkage argument seems to be behind us rather than ahead of us when it comes to public equity availability. So supply demand, not great. And then on top of that, I think the liquidity spigot is slowly being turned off. And think about it, this year, we started the year expecting Fed rate cuts. We started the year expecting central bank rate cuts. What are we getting? No rate cuts. And I think
we don't know that yet. We don't know that yet. Also, when she says the liquidity spigot's being turned off, I mean, 85 billion of liquidity just showed up out of somewhere for SpaceX, and it didn't crash the market. So, I mean, I get it. Like, liquidity is tight, but when the markets are at all-time highs and SpaceX gets a free 85 billion out of thin air, like, maybe liquidity is not as tight as some people think. And if we get rate cuts, liquidity is only going to get more loose.
that is very important to think about, because last year was essentially the best year on record when it comes to liquidity. Everybody was buying equities. You had individual investors, you had corporate buybacks, you had privatizations, you had the government was buying U.S. equities. Everyone was buying U.S. equities. And this year, I think we're getting a little less of that liquidity machine, and we're also getting a big shift in supply demand. So that's why we're bearish at an index level. Within the index, like I said, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to own income, value, areas of the market that are throwing off capital rather than using it. But I'll pause for a breath there.
No. So Savita, I want to bring this up because out of all those things you said, we did have earlier today, we had, again, earnings have been incredibly strong, right, at this point, up nearly 30% in the first quarter. Ed Yardeni was on Squawk Box this morning and said it's fueling the rally. So here's what he said. Take a listen.
I've been among the bulls and I haven't been bullish enough. I mean, it's really extraordinary. We've been in what I call not a FOMO market, but a FEMO market. FEMO meaning fabulous earnings momentum. Earnings have been unbelievably strong.
There is no doubt, Savita, that we are no longer at the war lows in March, right? We don't have a low base to build gains off of, to your original point about, the good earnings years not being the best years for stock returns. But we do have markets at or near record highs and earnings momentum, as Yardeni points out, to justify it. So is there a reason why we shouldn't think that this could at least continue, not off like a rocket ship, but still continue the way that it's been going?
look, I think that it can continue, and earnings, if they continue to surprise, can fuel added gains. But how much more can earnings surprise at this point? Also, when you look at where we've seen the biggest earnings surprises this year, it hasn't just been technology. It's also been energy. It's been materials. It's been mostly semis within tech. So yeah, I get it. Earnings are great, but I don't necessarily think this is a market that sets itself up for more positive surprises, given that analysts are now forecasting close to the highest long-term growth rates in earnings that we've seen in the.
Okay, so that's her argument. Her argument is earnings. I don't even think her argument's really liquidity. Her argument is we've topped out on earnings growth. And obviously we will see in Q2 if that's correct. But I think that's kind of the major reason why she's saying to sell, because if earnings can't continue, and that's been the story, then you would see multiple compression. The question is, does that actually play out that way?
History of our data. So this is the thing. The market doesn't necessarily react to earnings as they happen. It reacts to surprise on expected earnings. Let's think about what's expected. We're expecting 22% earnings growth. I think it's going to be an awesome year for earnings, but I don't know if we're going to continue to see those really strong positive surprises that have driven the market higher. Think about what's driven the market over the last few years. It was a surprise around ChatGPT. It was a surprise around coming out of COVID. It was a surprise around stimulus coming from the government or from the Fed. Those levers, unless they get re-amplified, are not coming back unless we get ChatGPT Part 2. Our view is, where the surprise is going to be, maybe in energy holding up better than we thought it would post a ceasefire, maybe in financials actually starting to enjoy lending growth. I think the economy is doing great. I like cyclical companies with a tether to GDP. I like companies that benefit from earnings growth, but those aren't necessarily the biggest parts of the S&P right now, and that's why I worry about the index.
I don't know if we need ChatGPT 2 to set off increased earnings, which, by the way, one could argue that the agentic tailwind that we've had, it has been Jensen called it the iPhone moment for agents. And so, if agents are going to, that's why Intel, ARM, AMD, right? Without agents and agentic workloads and inference, you wouldn't have the CPU revolution we've seen. You also wouldn't have the memory tailwind that we've seen. So, I don't know if you need to have something as big as ChatGPT again. I think now it's just a question of building on top of all these different model releases. But yeah, so that's the real bear case. I don't think it's liquidity, because liquidity argument I'm not buying. There's plenty of liquidity out there. If there's 80 billion ready to go into SpaceX in a day, then liquidity is there. There's 8 trillion on the sidelines. This is more so about their belief that earnings have topped out. And that might not be correct. By the way, the Marvell CFO just sold $60 million worth of stock, unscheduled. So they sold on the open market. 207,000 shares, 48% of their entire holdings. They sold it today at 290, and Marvell's higher than 290. So someone bought those shares and is actually up on their investment right now. Marvell 306 after hours. It's not the CFO. This was the CEO. Oh, sorry, not the CEO. It was the CFO. Damn, that's a lot, bro. 50% of your position in the open market, not even scheduled. That means, my gut reaction to that is that dude was like, hey, I'm taking some freaking profits here, and I'm letting go of 50% of my stock. It is not a time sell. It is not. It's Rule 144, not 10(5)(b)(1). It is also the CFO, which, naturally, I think will beg the question: does the CFO see the numbers, and is the chief financial guy saying, "Hey, maybe the stock's a little up there because we're not going to put up the results that maybe justify this market cap next quarter"? Then again, how long has this guy been here? William is his name. William. Where is this guy on the website? William Mentages, EVP Chief Financial Officer at Marvell. This dude just made a cool 60 million today. He's been at Marvell for 10 years. He's been CFO since January 2023. He's leaving as CFO? Oh, wait. That's true, right? Because aren't they bringing in the Adobe CFO? Yeah. Okay, so look, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that the dude wanted to take a lot of profits, but him leaving makes more sense for why he's selling. The problem is you don't have to sell on the way out, right? You could still hold your stock even if you're leaving, but it also makes more sense that you would take some profits if you're leaving. Yeah, I forgot the CFO for Adobe is going to Marvell. And that CFO for Adobe is probably going to get shares at a strike price that's not what William got it at. I'm definitely saying his name wrong, but 10 years ago. Had to pay for those Knicks tickets. Yeah, that's true. He still has half. Look, I like Marvell, but I think the valuation here doesn't make sense either. I'm sorry. Same thing with SpaceX, dude. I mean, Jensen said it's $1 trillion, so it's going to go to $1 trillion. But this thing fell to 240 last week like there was no tomorrow. So, I mean, to me, this is also momentum. I really don't think the fundamentals qualify Marvell to be worth almost $300 billion right now. So I can get why people are selling. But then again, the fundamentals might not matter here. If the explosive growth in optics that Jensen has been calling for is going to happen, then who cares? I mean, the market's pricing that in before it happens. By the way, here's some updates on the Iran thing. A senior U.S. official said Washington had discussed the possibility of sanctions relief and a big $300 billion fund to rebuild the country. The incentives would be connected to Iran's performance, adhering to the memorandum of understanding that is expected to be formally signed in Switzerland on Friday, which is what J.D. Vance said, right? He said it was like performance-based. They added the fund would not come from government and instead would be created from companies keen to invest in the nation of 90 million with abundant energy resources. The structure and management of the fund were not immediately clear. Interesting. Financial Times is saying it's not taxpayers, it's companies that want to set up shop in Iran. Probably if Iran is getting, one could argue, more intertwined with the global economy, then maybe you have some company interest. There's a lot of interest from businesses in Europe, Asia, South Korea, Japan, etc., and American companies and business as well. The person said if the sanctions are lifted, this fund would be a significant amount and it would be huge. I kind of like that, though. I mean, Iran has not really participated in the global economy for a long time. If you actually get sanctions off and you start to get companies that really invest, I mean, there's 90 million people that theoretically could have a lot more access to American, South Korean, Japanese products and services, and it would jumpstart their economy. I mean, dude, have you guys seen Iran's inflation? Iran's inflation is kind of crazy. $1 is like, let's see if I can do the math. 1 Iran dollar to USD. It's like some ridiculous number. Yeah, it's like you have to get to 1 million. No, you have to get to 10 million. 1 million Iranian reals is 73 cents of a US dollar. 1 million of their currency gives you 73 cents of a dollar. So obviously their economy has been in the gutter, and it wouldn't be horrible to have more people coming in. Liz Ann Saunders said the same regarding less surprise earnings growth. Yeah, I actually saw that in the morning. She, I wouldn't say they're super, I mean, Bank of America is a bit more bearish, but you're seeing a lot of the suits come out and say, can this earnings growth continue? I think, I've been saying, what's the bear case? I think that's actually the next, like a mainstream media bear case that's out there, which is not just part of the mainstream media, but this is what I think you guys are going to be hearing more and more of. Can earnings growth continue? And quite frankly, there's some legitimacy to that argument because, again, Google's EPS growth was largely fueled by their stake in Anthropic and SpaceX. Same thing with Amazon. Same thing with Microsoft with their stake in OpenAI, because all those companies raised the funding round in Q1. So if you take that away, the EPS beats are there, but they're not as significant. Like they're not 80% beats. They might be like 35% beats, which are still pretty big beats. But, you know, is it enough at these valuations now for the market to keep thinking that it's okay? But if that happens and those names dip, it's like, okay, people are going to buy the dip, right? Like, okay, let's say Google doesn't miss on earnings, but it's not that impressive, goes from 369 to 330. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of buyers for Google at 330. We know Berkshire is ready to buy at 350. So even with these dips, it's hard to imagine it's, you know, so bearish. Convert Elon's net worth into Iranian currency. Oh my gosh, bro. 1.3 trillion, folks. 1.3 trillion. Who wants to work with the IRGC? You know, that's a great point. If companies are going to start investing in Iran and we still have an IRGC that functionally has control, I mean, that is another question to discuss, given we haven't had a regime change, at least in the way that I think was said we would. So a lot more questions than answers, but we got to see what ends up happening. Ray, thank you for this super chat right here. Did not know this. So 7% sequentially from August to October is when eligible shares unlock each day, 35% of the float. Interesting for SpaceX. So there's going to be some time we have until it officially unlocks. 195 after hours with Mr. SpaceX. Let's hear from Dan Niles, get his take on what he thinks is going on right now.
Then you throw on top of that the SpaceX IPO. And if you're participating in that, you're listening to Elon Musk saying, we're going to have to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to achieve our goals. Right. The SOX last week was up 9%. So you were selling the hyperscalers down, but you were buying where they were spending all this money, which is the semiconductor companies. And so I think that just gets back to go to where the money is being spent, not the guys who are spending the money because they've got cash flow concerns or having to raise capital to fund that spending.
Right. Although look at SpaceX day 2. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I wrote about it this weekend, right? Russell added SpaceX, said they were going to add SpaceX to their indices on June 26th. The next one will be the MSCI. That can happen in about 10 trading days after the IPO. And then the NASDAQ 100 can add it about 15 days after the IPO. So it's going to be really hard to be negative on this name until you at least get out to the NASDAQ 100 ad. After that, then things like valuation, et cetera, are going to matter. But as you know, we learned during the meme stock craze, right? Valuations can always go much higher than you ever imagined, but eventually they do normalize out. And so I think, you know, anybody who wants to be negative on this until that NASDAQ 100 ad happens, that's not a very smart idea.
Right. So we'll see mid-July maybe where we are, if it's a little bit of that effect of buy the rumor, sell the fact, or however. What about the business? If the CapEx plans, if you hear what Elon Musk is saying and think about where all that spend is going, again, we've had analysts doubling their price targets on Western Digital today. I mean, we'll talk about that in Power Lunch. Is that everyone wants to know when that portion of the chase is over? And does it still have a little bit more room to run, a lot more room to run? When do we start moving on from the chip stocks to something else?
Well, I don't think you can until you get to anniversarying when you had agentic AI show up. So if you go back and you think, well, when did that really kick off? OpenClaw got formalized on January 30th. And what agentic AI does is it means you need 10 to 100 times more tokens to do all of these, you know, big tasks versus just asking a chat-based question to an AI, right? So if you have your AI go out and say, hey, you know, book me tickets, get me a hotel room, get me a car, figure out what sites to see when I go on vacation, and, you know, put this all together in an itinerary and email it to me in Word. That'll take 10 to 100 times more tokens than if you just ask your chat-based AI, hey, what are good places to see when I go on vacation at this place, right? So that'll take at least a year, I think, so you get to early next year before you put in enough capacity and you anniversary this, and then there's a real problem. So I think that this has a lot more room to run. And don't forget valuations. Like if you look at Tesla and you want to be optimistic and you say, hey, add $26 billion in revenues to what, because of the Google deal for 11 billion and Anthropic deal for 15 billion that they announced, you go, well, yeah, that may be all true, but you still got coming up later the fact that you have NVIDIA and other companies that are trading actually at reasonable valuations on the semi side, where you can buy an NVIDIA at just above a market multiple, but it's growing revenues at 80%. Whereas you look at a SpaceX and you say, hey, this thing, even if you want to be optimistic, it's trading at close to 45 times revenues, which is obviously pretty expensive.
It gets back to that point about an overbuild, right? And so, his argument about agents and needing all this compute and inference, once we build that out, once we have all those CPUs that are being sold at scale, when does the build get to a point where the comps, it's kind of just like the story of Robinhood's earnings, right? Robinhood had great earnings last year because the comps were easy. This year it's been tougher. Does that happen to all of the semiconductors in 2027? And I don't know if you can be fully bullish on the market if you think that's the case, because if that's true, the semis are going to get hit pretty badly if they can't actually grow at those levels. And I mean, if you look at Broadcom's guidance and assume a little bit of conservativeness, you would imagine, no, Broadcom is estimating to do 50 billion this year in AI revenues. 2027, it's estimated to do a lot more than 50 billion by orders of magnitude. And if that doesn't stop in 2028, 2029, even if the growth rate slows down incrementally, but the volume of growth is still meaningful. Same with the software companies that benefit from AI. Like, you wouldn't think that earnings recession, I guess is how people are framing it, would easily be there. SpaceX, are we at 200 after hours? We are 196. This is crazy, bro. Again, I traded it twice today. I made $2 on each trade. If I just held it from the first time I bought it, I'd be up like 25 bucks. But I just do it. You couldn't stomach it because after hours, it just keeps going up and up. But during the day, it would have some nasty red candles down. And you'd just be like, all right, that's it. Pack it up. And then boom, a buyer would come in and just shoot it right back up. Like, volatile. By the way, you had a director that just bought $370,000 of Broadcom. You had a director that just bought $370,000 of Broadcom. So you do have at least some people buying the dip as there's insiders here. Andy says, I loaded more service now calls. We've seen this cycle before, from chips to software back to chips. Guess what's next? Yeah, I don't hate that, bro. I really don't. The fact that software had a massive move 2 weeks ago and then it just came crashing right back down is really stupid. I think these names come back. I just think, again, the semis trade got hot, again after a week of taking a break. And unfortunately, when it took a break, the software names took a break with it, which is unfortunately how this ended up playing out. Your CPA is going to hate you come tax time with these small trades. Yeah, but that's their job, right? Their job is to figure out all the... Dude, AI should help them navigate it as well. I don't think in this environment, you should be able to scan these documents pretty quickly if you're a CPA. But look, the momentum was there. And that's the thing. Like, the momentum on a name like SpaceX right now is going to invite a lot of short-term people to just trade it, scalp it. They don't care about holding this thing. I wonder if it's also attracting a lot of people that think, their targets are not $2 within a couple minutes, but, $30, $40 within the next couple months, and that leads them to hold on to it. And that, I just feel, is a bit more dangerous, but obviously could accelerate the excitement here. NVIDIA officially files their $25 billion 7 parts offering for bond yields, or for new bonds. Where was the 10-year today? Were we down? 10-year 4.47? We were down today. Not bad. Not bad. I bet you sound better. COVID has nothing on you. Yeah, I mean, honestly, after the Tuesday was the worst of it. After Tuesday, I started feeling a lot better. So usually the fourth day of it is the worst. And, now it's back to a lot better. A company spokesperson for NVIDIA aims to use the proceeds for general corporate purposes, including the repayment and refinancing of outstanding notes. The main reason, according to one of the sources, was to establish a liquid benchmark to the cost of its credit, more so than funding capital expenditures. The chipmaker capped the bond issuance at $25 billion to keep low credit spreads, and in contrast with the hyperscalers funding their investments in AI, one of the sources said big tech companies have signaled that spending on AI would not slow down, with combined outlays set to surpass $700 billion this year, up from $400 billion in 2025. I think it actually makes sense if they're doing it to signal to the market that it's not scary for hyperscalers and large caps to take on more debt and establish a liquid benchmark. I mean, that's an interesting reason. I don't know if I fully believe that that's the reason, but if they're trying to be strategic about it, maybe in some way NVIDIA is trying to help the hyperscalers by showing the general credit markets that this debt is not scary to buy, and that credit default swaps shouldn't go higher just because the greatest companies in the world are continuing to fund the cost of capital, especially with rates as high as they are right now. That's what NVIDIA's did. Amit, are we still in fear? I think we are. Fear and greed. Yeah, we are very close to neutral, but we are still in fear. Amit, I'm holding SpaceX to the time that the 3 indices must purchase shares July 9th. During that time, insiders cannot sell. Yeah, look, that's a decent thesis. I don't know if I fully believe that the indices buying is not going to result in volatility to the downside. I mean, we've seen this with companies getting into the S&P 500, right? They get in, they have a pop, and then guess what? People sell. And a lot of people that are loading up right now might use the indices buying as liquidity to sell. Now, the insiders can't, to your point, which is bullish, but you might have a lot of institutions, traders, the BlackRocks. I mean, the idea that Jane Street is not figuring out how to manipulate SpaceX in some capacity right now. So I don't think it's a horrible thesis of buy it through the indices. But even, Rocket Lab, CoreWeave, NASDAQ, they were supposed to get a big bid after they were announced to be in the NASDAQ 100, and they didn't. They sold off last Friday. The only thing that really got them up today was the Iran deal, which pumped up the entire market. So I just wonder, and also there's still a valuation issue on SpaceX, right? So is this thing going to pump to 240 just because of NASDAQ as an inclusion, even if insiders can't sell? Like, does it really get that ridiculous? Or is that not ridiculous? Is 240, which is going to be what? 240 from here would be, it would be another $500 billion in market cap. So that'd be $3 trillion at 240, 250. And I don't know. Yeah, then you have Warsh with rates. I mean, what if Kevin Warsh just says some stuff that's not bullish? What if he doesn't give people the bullish outlook they've been waiting for? What if he's a bit more conservative? What if that's enough to get them? I mean, there's still variables that are out there, right? And do I want to hold on to something super high beta in the midst of those variables? Now, obviously, if those variables go the right direction, the high beta takes you higher, then you have the indices buying. So there is a core thesis there. Also, if you bought at 150, 160, you have a margin of safety. But buying it right now after that massive run, I don't have the stomach for it. But obviously, some parts of the market do, which is why it keeps going higher. The stock draft is officially over. It's over today, right? I don't think, is it over tomorrow? We started June 16th last year. I guess technically it's over tomorrow. Matt's at 58. I'm at 75. Steve's at 65. Tanner's at 15. Chris is at 46. Steve said today, right? Yeah, he said today. No, it has to be today because we started, well, technically, if we started on June 16th, no, well, June 16th was the closing price. So wouldn't we use June 16th's closing price next year? Or the year later? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's tomorrow. But regardless, unless Rocket Lab or look, if it does end tomorrow, I will lose if Rocket Lab and ASTS go to the absolute moon tomorrow. Matt's gonna win. If not, then Micron's got to go to like 1,300 tomorrow for Steve to win. If those two things don't happen, then I should have this in the bag. It's today's closing price, right? Yeah, that makes more sense that it's today's closing price, but I feel like it would also make sense for it to be June 16th, which is literally 1 year later. But whatever. The point is, this is likely going to be the order unless tomorrow market crashes. Hood really helped out in the last minute, dude. Very last minute. Hood helped out. Oh, you're right. June 16th to June 15th is 365 days. That's fair. Okay, so that means I won then. That means I won. That's it. It's official. We're done. That's probably why Steve mentioned today would be the last day. Okay, cool. But wasn't it the night of the 16th that you chose? Let me call him right now, bro. Let me see. Because he's in charge of this shit. He knows. If it's tomorrow, then we still have to wait. Saturday will be the new one. Yeah, Duolingo's done haunting me. So, Steve.
Hey, congratulations is in order, sir.
Okay, so it ends today or it ends tomorrow?
It ends today. We started it on the 16th, and a full year would be that it ends on the 15th.
You're right. You're right. That makes sense. That makes sense.
You have officially won. You came in first place. Congratulations. For your troubles, you won the first pick.
Wow.
Because we're not a bunch of pansies that let the loser go first.
Yeah, dude. That I've heard of that rule conceptually, but no, the winner should get something, right?
Yeah, I mean, they do it in sports because if it's a blowout every game, nobody's going to buy tickets. That's not us. That's not us. If you win, you deserve to go first.
Damn, dude. As I'm
it's just like when you play basketball. One-on-one, winner's out.
Right, winner. Yeah, exactly. Winner gets ball. If you score, then winner gets ball. Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so the semis basically saved all of our portfolios. To have it. So
without Micron, I'd be down.
Yeah, without Micron, I think you'd be negative.
And how about this? Tanner's the only one that didn't outperform the S&P.
What was the S&P? Oh, hold on. Let me
25.5%.
25.5%. Yeah, I mean, look, he got caught up with some of those software names, but the good thing is this year we can get rid of a couple picks per quarter, which is good.
Yep.
Okay, so now I have to make a decision. What's my first pick? I will be thinking.
Listen, if you don't pick it, I'm going to.
I gotta think. What's my first pick?
If you don't take NVIDIA, I'm taking it.
I mean, NVIDIA underperformed pretty aggressively this year so far. I mean, I don't know, dude.
I think that, if you go Broadcom, you go Micron.
The problem is the degenerate in me says that Duolingo's bottomed.
Dude, don't let that be your first pick.
I'm
Nobody's gonna take Duolingo.
But how epic would it be if I go up 80% on Duolingo?
You know what? Take Duolingo first pick, please.
Dude, can we I want to adjust what would happen if I didn't have I can't change this, but if I didn't have the 73% down, I wonder what my actual return would be.
Just delete it and put it back.
I can't. It's view only. I can't do that.
I'll log in. I'll do it for you.
Yeah, can you? Because I'm curious. Because if I didn't get that, this would have been it would have been crazy, the return. Like change that 73% to negative 20%. Like assume it still had a bad pick, and then tell me what the return would have been.
If you got rid of it completely, you would have 92.37.
Okay, put negative 20. If you can format that, negative 20. Yeah, that would have still been a massive 81, dude. Okay, so that pick really ruined it, but AMD and NVIDIA, Nebius carried it, and Apple.
How about I was in last place for more than half a year?
No, you had the most epic comeback. You were negative
and
15.
I told everybody there's still a lot of time left on the clock.
No, you were right. You were right. There's a lot. Dude, it's not over till it's over.
That's right.
Oh, you're
Right,
second.
right.
Your Matt's not even second. You're second.
I know. 807%.
Okay, so if I pick NVIDIA, you pick an AMD?
If you pick NVIDIA, I gotta take Broadcom probably.
Oh, man.
Broadcom or CoreWeave.
Guys, I feel like there's no way I can't take NVIDIA. Like, it is the cheapest semi, and if we're bullish CapEx, how is NVIDIA not going to be higher from here?
Yeah, but even though it's the cheapest semi, and I'm not saying this because I want, I'm just saying that doesn't mean it's going to move the most.
Oh, you're absolutely saying that because you want it.
I'm trying to get in your head.
I feel like it's no surprise. I told people, right? I think I have to take NVIDIA here. Like you can't pick you can't pick any of the other Mag 7s, even if they're cheaper than NVIDIA, because it's freaking NVIDIA.
I feel like you got to take Palantir or Hood.
No, I'm not taking Palantir Hood first. I'm not doing that.
What?
I don't think any of you guys are going to take them because you guys hate them. So I'll have time to get them, and I've got to go heavy on CapEx, dude. I have to. Like that's the story. If I'm wrong on CapEx,
I already have my portfolio planned out.
Honestly, I didn't plan out anything. All I know is I probably have the first pick, so I'm thinking NVIDIA. But
no, you don't probably. You have the first pick.
Yeah, so I mean, NVIDIA's likely there, but I really haven't thought of the other 11 picks at all, to be honest.
Or do you take SpaceX and throw a caution to the wind?
There's no way in hell, dude. I can't. I'm not gonna put that type of stress on me. Like I'm not. It might be the winner, but like at some point that IPO lockup ends and people get to sell and like they're gonna sell.
I hear you.
Okay, so hold on. I get first, you get second, then Matt gets third.
Matt, then Chris, then Tanner, then Jason, because Jason's a new guy.
So then the second round starts with who first?
Me.
Okay.
Matt, Chris, Tanner, Jason, you.
Okay, got it. So I'll have the first pick and then the last pick for the first 2 rounds.
Yep.
So I'll have basically after NVIDIA, you guys are going to pick.
I'm taking Broadcom or CoreWeave.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to wait 11 companies after you guys. So if I take NVIDIA, you take Broadcom. I wonder what Matt's first pick is going to be because last time he went all space and it worked, but the space names have a different valuation now. So I don't know if he goes back to all space. Chris is not taking any of the Neo Clouds because he hates them.
He may take fucking Amazon or Alphabet or Microsoft or ServiceNow.
Chris will probably take ServiceNow as the first. Tanner, I know Tanner loves Nebius, but I don't know if he takes it at 260. I'm not sure if he actually takes it at 260.
And he'd be dumb to take it at 260.
You said he'd be dumb to take it at 260?
Yeah, you can't take Nebius at 260.
Maybe not in the first round, but I think Nebius will get off the board at some point. Like, what is Tanner going to pick? Okay, so Tanner and Jason have the 5th and 6th pick. So let's play out round 1. I take NVIDIA, you take Broadcom. Matt, I'm going to say takes Amazon. I'll just do a safe one. Chris takes ServiceNow. Tanner and Jason are left.
Tanner's going to take, at that point, he'll take CoreWeave.
Oh, that's what he would take. Yep. That's probably what he's going to take.
Maybe I forego Broadcom in the first round and take CoreWeave first just to piss off Tanner.
Broadcom is safer, but I think CoreWeave actually is going to move probably faster.
Well, I get first pick in the second round, so if nobody takes it, I can just take it.
That's true.
And I got a backup. My backup's Taiwan Semi.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting, guys, because this time valuations are not like they were last time. Like, now we got to do some real... Like, I got Nebius at 50 last time, you know? Like, it's going to be a little tough to find those gems. But
well, here's the thing. I don't think anybody's catching a 4 or 5 or 6X this year.
Yeah, I mean, all of us, at least 3 or 4 of us had a multi-bagger last time. I
mean, you had 2 of them. You had 332 and 415%. I had one that was 807. Matt had a 311 and 109. Tanner had 144 and 105. And then Chris had 109 and 338.
Dude,
so,
Marvell. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if Marvell can triple next year. But maybe it does. What if it does, bro? Like,
what if it gets the Jensen touch?
that would be $1 trillion, basically, close to $1 trillion.
Did you see Chris's sheet versus SPY? All of us collectively. I mean, we had 3 positions that were down more than 50%, and collectively, we're still up 51.71%.
That's crazy.
Like, we almost doubled the S&P's return.
But it goes to show how hard it is to beat the S&P. Because if it were not for a few names, all of us would have, like if Matt didn't have Rocket Lab and ASTS, doesn't beat the S&P. If I don't have AMD or
Well,
Nebius,
that's why diversification is the only free lunch, because you never know what's going to hit and what's not going to hit.
Yeah, but in the midst of diversification, you also have to take some big swings. Otherwise, you know?
I don't think Micron was that big of a swing to take.
But you took it.
I get it.
You took it.
I'll tell you what, I would run my portfolio back, to be honest with you.
I don't think that's crazy. I don't love Netflix there. I know a lot of them are down a ton. I really don't love Salesforce or PayPal, dude. I'm sorry. I just don't.
Yeah, that's fine. But the thing is, are they going lower? Probably not. So those 33, 36, and 41% down, what are they going to be, down 5% from here? Who cares?
Dude, you had Microsoft at 480 a year ago. It's at 399 now. That's crazy. Meta 700. And at 700, Meta was a good deal back then. It didn't seem crazy. People are saying Amit's in a worse position because you get 2nd and 7th. I get 1st and 11th. Seems way worse. Honestly, I should get all 12 picks first, and then you guys can just get the rest. I mean, that's what I mean. I mean, dude, if I can't beat all of you guys, if I get the first 12 picks, that would be embarrassing. So I don't want that pressure, because that would be
bad.
Although I think I can get some pretty nice picks. But yeah, guys, that's how we're gonna do it. It is what it is. Those are the rules. And I guess for that first pick, I get whatever company I want in the market. Like, that is important to have that first one.
It's very important.
And now we have 12 companies because we have Jason, so it's not even just 10 companies now.
Yeah.
But technically, you at 2nd and 7th is pretty decent, Steve, because you have the 2nd, and then it's actually you don't get the 1st, but you're not in a horrible spot.
Yeah, but after those 2 rounds, think about how long I wait.
That's true.
It's not like, everybody gets screwed.
That's fair.
And if you look at the portfolios, you and I, our first picks didn't even work out.
That's true.
I mean, my first 4 picks didn't work out.
Did your last pick, was it?
My last pick saved me, so...
For everyone that wants to participate as well, you can do it at home. Just pick your 10 stocks. Now, granted, it wouldn't be in the draft sense, because obviously, we're doing a legit draft where if I take one, Tanner can't take one, Steve can't take one. But if you guys want to pick 10 stocks to go long on starting June 20th, then you pick your 10. And even if it's similar to some of our other portfolios, I doubt it'd be the exact 10 as any one of us. And then you just measure it yourself.
I'll tell you what. I may be shorting SpaceX for my last pick.
Wait, we're allowed to short, right?
Yes.
But how many picks can we short?
You can short all 10 if you want. Who gives a shit?
Okay, so we can't go long and short on the same pick, but we're allowed.
No.
Okay, so we're gonna have a quarterly rebalance where you can get rid of 2 picks. They're all equal weighted, by the way, for those asking. So if you play this at home, literally just in an Excel sheet, equal weight them. So it's not going to be too different. And then we can okay, but if I short like SpaceX, I have to stay with that for 90 days, basically.
Yes. Now
that's scary.
Now
that's scary.
You can trade if somebody will take it off your hands before the rebounds.
Yeah, but if I'm getting clobbered on a SpaceX short, why would anyone trade with me?
Maybe I think it's gone too high and it's going to go down.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't think I'm going to short anything, though. I don't know. I mean, technically as a hedge, it's not crazy. By the way, SpaceX. What did you think 20% today, dude? After hours, it's almost at 200.
It's a $2.52 trillion company. It's almost as big as Amazon. Get the fuck out of here. Like, come on. What are we doing? I get it, the Elon premium. I get it, compute. I get the story. But at some point, this is going to be dangerous.
Apparently, the first insider shares don't get sold until mid-August.
Well, maybe it goes to 5. I mean, what are we going to... If this isn't ridiculous now, what happens if they come out with news that they signed a deal with OpenAI next, and it goes to $4 trillion, and it's almost as big as NVIDIA? Are we going to say that it's fair?
Dude, if this thing is almost as big as NVIDIA, I don't know, bro.
I mean, it just goes back to nobody is looking at numbers. Nobody's looking at valuation. Nobody cares. And there's so many comments, at least in my streams, about why would I want to be in something that's not moving? All people care about is if it's moving in the short term.
I mean,
this can,
that's kind of true, right?
Break down. This can break down pretty quickly.
But bro, it's the same thing. When Poet was going up to 25, everyone wanted to be in Poet, and then it crashed. Everyone's excited when the thing keeps going. Once it takes a breather, like an actual breather, people stop feeling that exuberance of, oh my goodness, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's like, no,
I feel like everybody forgets what Robinhood and Palantir did.
I remember it pretty well.
I mean, they were cut in half.
And
everybody thought they were going to keep going up.
I was talking about this earlier in the show. I mean, it definitely, a lot of humility for me this year. I mean, when Robinhood was 150 in October, I should have told myself, dude, this is a little unsustainable. And I was just like, no, it'll be 150 forever. It's like, no, that's not how it, and this is the lessons that you learn and you grow from it. But for everyone thinking SpaceX will just be here forever, maybe it will, but on the chance it's not, it's just a little aggressive, just like buying Hood at 150 was a little aggressive.
It's very aggressive. The difference is that people are buying it with it. Unlike Tesla, everybody expects FSD tomorrow and Optimus tomorrow. If Elon doesn't deliver space stations in orbit, or I'm sorry, data centers in orbit for 10 years, nobody's going to care because nobody expects it to be tomorrow. That's the difference.
That's the exciting part of their thesis, right? You can keep saying eventually it'll happen, and it's space, so no one knows when it actually is going to happen.
And here's the other thing does he just have free reign on space? Really think about it. If he has an Optimus army behind him and he just sends them all into space, who's going to tell him what he can and can't do?
Well, but see, that's also really exciting for the vision of SpaceX. You got robots on Mars. That's what gets people to be like, oh, crap, this is a cool thing to invest in.
No, but really think about it. Who has the authority over him? Nobody. Not the U.S., not China, nobody. It's space. What are you going to do? Send the Marines up there? The Marines can't get there without you.
Oh, that's a good point. I don't know, man. The level of excitement today to buy this thing up, I think it definitely disproved the thesis on liquidity is not there for SpaceX. It would crack the market.
Oh, it's there. It's just, at what point does everybody that's buying it for their grandchildren stop?
Okay, last question for you. You've been preaching this idea that oil will go below 80, and we're not there yet. We're very close, 80.75.
We got there at one point today.
We did get there for a little bit, then it spiked back up, but we're basically, in my opinion, looking like it wants to fall to that 75 range, hopefully if progress continues to improve. Do you think, we just listened to Bank of America. Their analysts said it's time to sell. They don't think earnings growth can continue. They think there's liquidity problems. Do you think
they're stupid? It's okay. They're cheaper than I thought. Okay.
Do you think crude coming down is enough to keep this bull market going?
Yes. I don't understand how some of these people actually say this stuff and believe it. The only lever of inflation right now is oil. It hits transportation costs. It hits input costs on manufacturing. It's certainly not products. Services is 70% of the economy. So if not a single company pulled their guidance.
Yeah. By the way, I got a pedicure the other day. It was still $30. It's been $30 for like a year. So.
I mean, I don't think anything's really going up in price.
Yeah, the manicure was also $30 too. So that was, it was good.
So when you really think about it, what these companies are going to have worse margins with oil coming down? No, they're going to have better margins. Amazon's going to have better margins because their transportation costs are going to go down. Putting the lights on and running the AC will be cheaper with energy costs lower. And you have productivity boosts from AI and robotics. Not a single company that matters has pulled guidance. And over 70% of the companies in S&P have beat earnings.
Okay, but Bank of America's argument, which was a new one I heard today, and I think this will become the mainstream talking point now that the Iran war is done, is that earnings can't surprise the way that they did in Q1, and the market's going to falter on the idea that it's not a massive beat on EPS anymore.
You don't need it to surprise. You just need earnings to keep going up. Eventually, and that'll be good because maybe we get a downfall of 15% and people on margin get liquidated, which I would be fine with. And the reality is all you need is earnings growth to continue. It doesn't have to surprise to the upside. These companies just need to beat and maybe raise a little bit. And the narrative stays intact because eventually these companies will just get cheaper and get bought.
Well, I agree with you there. If Google falls 15%, it's going to get bought up. But nonetheless, Google falling 15% means the bull market takes a little breather, right?
How much money's on the sideline in money markets?
$8 trillion.
Are you telling me that $1 trillion of that can't move if the market gets oversold by 15%?
No, I think it can. But the broader question is for people that want to buy now, if they think that earnings estimates are going to, again, they're going to grow in Q2, but they're not going to grow at the level they grew at in Q1 because the comps are tougher. Is that enough of a reason to kind of stall things out? Now, I don't think it's the best bear case, but that seems to be the one that people are now
If that's the bear case that I have to put up with, then we're going to 9,000. Because that's the dumbest bear case I've heard.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as much of a bear case as much as it is a reason for equities to not move significantly higher in the short term.
I mean, if this deal actually gets signed on Friday, and if oil actually moves to a band of 65 to 75 for a while, you get CPI cooling off over the next 2 to 3 months. Same with PPI. We're going to find out on Wednesday how Warsh is going to run the Fed and what the tone's going to be. And we still have a housing market that is at standstill. Rates will come down eventually. I do think at this point we will get one rate cut, maybe 2 this year. And I know not a lot of people think about that, but if oil does what I think it's going to do, watch how quickly CME Group reverses course just as quickly as they went from 2 cuts to 2 hikes. They're going to reverse course again. And then what's the Bank of America analyst going to do?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a good point because the analysts only sound smart until everything they've been saying flips because the hard data meaningfully flips.
I mean, think about this. When you called me for the Japan yen carry trade, all those analysts sounded smart. What did I say to you? This is going to last for 2 days. It doesn't matter. And I explained why. And what happened? It ended up being a nothing burger. Don't forget, every 2 weeks, the majority of people that actually invest in this market are putting new capital in every 2 weeks through retirement account.
Well, SpaceX is about to get some of that juicy 2-week 401k capital pretty soon.
Yeah. You know, it's getting backstopped. You also have companies doing buybacks. It's all getting backstopped to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there could be potentially a little bit of a smaller growth rate in Q2 on earnings, but once again, to say that's a bear case, because those dips will get, I mean, people would love to get access to Google in the low 300s again, you know?
Let me ask you this. Meta grew 33% in Q1. Oh no, they're only going to grow 20% now, so what?
Yeah, we know they're not going to grow 20%. It's going to be a lot higher than 20%.
No, I'm just saying, like, oh no, if they only grew 20%, is that really a problem? No, it's not a problem.
No.
Like, and that's one of the dumb things with the market. And look, I know a lot of people don't like Salesforce, but if somebody took 5 minutes to go through the numbers the way I have, they would see that this thing is an incredible value play. It's Cisco from last year or from a year and a half ago. Everybody thought I was wrong on Cisco. It may have taken a little bit more time than what I thought it would have, but look how much Cisco is up from when I pitched on Finance Junkies. It was at like 45 to 120.
Yeah, the market rotated to well, Cisco also became a networking play. Salesforce still in software, but the market rotated to software 2 weeks ago.
They were always a networking play.
Yeah, but then networking became really important.
Right. But at the same time, the valuation was there on the numbers. It wasn't a story.
Right. That is fair. That is correct.
It's going to be the same thing with Salesforce. It just may take a while.
Would you pick it for the draft this year?
Absolutely. I don't think anybody's going to pick it, so I'll pick it 7th or 8th.
I wonder how much software is going to get picked from us. Like, I don't think Jason's picking a lot of software. I know Chris will pick ServiceNow, but I don't think he's going to pick like Adobe, or I don't know if Tanner is leaning into software. There's only one software company I really want, to be honest.
Salesforce is the one that I think is going to do really well. I mean, I think Now is going to do well, but Salesforce is the one. They actually have an AI business. People seem to forget that they own Slack. I mean,
okay. Don't tell me Slack is dude. They overpaid like $20 billion for Slack. That's not at all impressive.
Look at their balance sheet is pretty clean. Who cares?
They paid $40 billion for. There's no way in hell you can tell me Slack was worth $40 billion.
I'm just saying, there's a revenue driver.
Yeah, it drives revenue, but it also drove a lot of costs to buy it. That's it.
Okay. All right, but they're making right on it. It's okay. Company trades at less than 10 times free cash flow.
Yeah, I mean, it's cheap. It is freaking cheap.
I mean, you guys think somebody's going to take Microsoft, Meta, Amazon?
Yeah. It's going to be exciting. Saturday, we'll be live on Steve's channel. It'll be fun. I'll link his channel right here in the chat, but it should be a good time. And Steve will be managing the Excel sheet, all the rules and everything, so it should be a good time. SpaceX 200. Dude, SpaceX is teasing us with 200 after hours.
SpaceX going haywire.
If it normalizes 200, bro, like legit, that's the floor. I mean,
Chris and I are going to talk about it tonight. If you want to talk about it with us, we're probably going to really be hard on it. So it might be good to have somebody that's not. But I don't.
But I'm not the most bullish. You need to get a bull to help balance it out. I'm not the most bullish on it.
I want SpaceX to work, but at the same time, I think this is very dangerous for people.
No, I agree.
I mean, have you listened to what Camillo has said about it?
Camillo thinks it's stupid.
Yeah.
He thinks
and
it makes
for
no sense.
Camillo to think it's stupid.
Yeah, Camillo is the most risky investor I know.
Shit, he invested in when they didn't make any money.
Yeah. And he was in
For
it
that
privately
guy
as
to
well.
not be bullish, that's a problem.
Yeah. I agree. All right, Steve, thank you for joining. Appreciate your commentary here, and we will have the draft on Steve's channel on Saturday. By the way, an insider bought some Broadcom today, 370,000. So
nice.
Got some people buying the dip with you. Yeah, Steve will be live with Chris Knight, and we will have a new Basis Points in person out on Thursday. Thank you again, everyone, for watching Basis Points last week, even though it was virtual. Still super fun to have people check out the show.
Yep.
All right, Steve. Talk to you later.
Later.
This is what Camillo had to say about SpaceX last week.
Accelerate the entry into at least some of the indexes, meaning that the indexes will be forced to purchase off of a very small float. So there's essentially a massive tailwind and almost like a floor on this stock, at least from my perspective. So it feels like the stock probably should do okay or pretty good unless people are figuring out ways early on to hedge their positions that they're looking to liquidate once they're able to liquidate those positions, right? And Elon has this tiered structure where the better the stock does, the more you could liquidate early. Like if the stock is up 30% from its IPO, I think investors are allowed to start liquidating that stock. Listen, here's the thing, guys. It's really hard to assess how this does over the next 6 to 12 months. Just really difficult. I think investors are falling into a trap, not because they choose to invest in SpaceX, but because they choose to spend so much of their time researching and thinking about SpaceX. If you want to invest in SpaceX, fine, do it. But if you're spending an unordinary amount of your time reading, X post and articles and thinking about SpaceX, that I think is the biggest investment mistake that you've made all year, because there are so many great investment opportunities right now, and you're just spinning your wheels following the herd, doing what all the other idiotic investors do, which is wasting their time on something that they should be spending maybe 15 minutes analyzing and making a decision on.
Obviously, he's not a fan of the valuation, and he definitely doesn't think it's an opportunity with a massive amount of alpha. Nonetheless, the stock might continue to just keep making its move. All right, folks, that is it for me. Thank you all for joining. We'll be back tomorrow for the market open. It'll be Tuesday. Again, a little bit of a shorter week. Friday, markets are closed, but we will be back tomorrow. Do we have earnings tomorrow? We have nothing tomorrow. We will have Technical Tuesday, as usual, with Jason. But outside of that, we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll keep this going. Look, we got some real bullish momentum from this Iran thing coming to an end. Not every stock is back to its all-time high, but you're trying to get there. Hopefully, we can keep it going, and if we can, obviously, some of the laggards might be able to pick up. But buying the dip over the past couple of days has worked. I don't think it would surprise people if we don't end up breaking all-time highs, 760 on the S&P. We take a bit of a breather and have this all consolidate. Probably something that could have an anticipation for Kevin Warsh. But then again, if he ends up being as dovish as people think, maybe this thing just fully takes off. So Wednesday, I'll be live for FOMC. That'll be very important. And we'll keep following it from there. Where is Steve and Chris going to talk? On Steve's channel. So I'll link his channel tonight. They'll be talking about it. Also, I will link Cactus Jack. A lot of people, I was on the phone with someone actually over the weekend. They were just telling me how much they love it. So if you are not part of it, it is the, in my opinion, best way to get access to news 24/7 via WhatsApp. It's for free. You can pay $5 a month if you want to support, but it is for free. You can sign up, check it out, see how it works. Click right on the website, access the feed, and it really is. I just think if you care about keeping up with the markets like second by second, Cactus is awesome at actually curating it every single day. So you can check it out there. All right, folks, I will be back tomorrow on the market close. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate you all. We'll see you for the market open, market close tomorrow. We'll keep going from there. All right, buddy. Have a good one. See you guys tomorrow morning.